Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source, Comic Boom collaboration. As you can see from my background there, I'm coming to you from an uncharted desert isle after my 3-hour tour. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Those of you that listen to us in the U.S., big holiday weekend, which I sort of needed because there were 17 DC books this week, and that included Gotham City Villains 100-page spectacular and tons of annuals, which are oversized. And it's not unheard of for publishers to do this when there's an extra Wednesday in a month. They will often, or an extra Tuesday, I guess, in this case, since the comics DC books come out on Tuesday, that fifth week, they put all the annuals. But Rocky and I were talking before we started, and it's sort of unfortunate that there's so much packed into this week because these books, a couple of them especially, deserve, I feel like, their own day almost. It's kind of like when you have too many blockbuster movies scheduled to be released on the same weekend, how movie studios will spread them out so people aren't spread too thin. We read everything, we get the press copies, it doesn't cost us anything. But man, for people that read a lot of these books, it'd be an expensive week. There's good things to say about all the books. I feel overall it was a strong week, but you don't want to put out so many books that the hardcore fans feel like, oh my God, now it's work that I'm reading so many books. And yeah, really Batman heavy. But again, like we say all the time, the Batman is the engine that drives DC and pays their bills. So it's not hugely surprising, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like 17.
It's 8 titles this week, 8 Batman-related titles. If you throw in Robin, that's well over $50 American if you're a diehard Batman fan. And I got to say, there's 3 comics that I believe deserve to have more attention this week, but they're going to likely be overshadowed in some people's minds by all the Batman titles. And that's Action Comics 1037, which had a pretty big cliffhanger ending, which we'll get into. Justice League Incarnate, which Joshua Williamson's next big event, next big series leading into the Summer Crisis event. And Wonder Woman Historia, which we've been waiting for a while from Kelly Sue DeConnick and Phil Jiminez. So I just don't like how this annuals week is overshadowing some titles that deserve more love.
Yeah, I agree. And again, we're not pointing the finger at anybody. It might not be 100% DC's fault. Sure. I know that the Wonder Woman Historia got pushed back because of some printing issues and whatnot. So yeah, it's not the best sort of situation here, but what I really think would help, and we've talked about this, neither of us are big fans of having the backups and having the extra size books. The backups don't add much except $1 onto the price. But the other thing, I am more than ready for all the publishers, not just DC, to stop with these 100-page anthologies that cost $10. Oh. I know we had talked in the past. I've even said, well, maybe anthology is the way to go. Yeah, when you maybe have 4 stories, like the way Batman Urban Legends does it. I think that's the way. Like 4 stories is fine, but when it's 8 or 9 or 10 stories and it's 100 pages and it's $10, it's just because the quality is so widely disparate, and yes, you feel obligated to read it all because you paid $10. And frankly, some of them just aren't very good. So anyway, let's dive right in. The aforementioned Action Comics number 1037 from writer Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Miguel Mondoka is the artist. Adriana Lucas does the colors. Dave Sharp on letters. And there was a backup, and to shoot myself in the foot here, I actually enjoyed this backup quite a bit. Maybe it's because I don't feel like we get enough Martian Manhunter these days, but there's a Martian Manhunter backup called A Face in the Crowd from writer Sean Aldridge. Adriana Melo is the artist, Hi-Fi's the colors, and Dave Sharp does the letters. So, yeah, Rocky, this was an action-packed issue. What'd you think?
Well, I love this, man. I'm Phillip Kennedy Johnson. He, like I said before, I've used that magical phrase, lipstick on a pig. That's what he's taken Bendis' Superman stories, which were awful. In my mind, I wasn't a fan of. And this was basically the first comic that I wanted to read this week because I'm just so excited. I think he's doing such a great job with the Superman, taking the authority, going to War World. I'm so excited about this, and I think Phillip Kennedy Johnson has done such a good job that I was more than prepared to forgive the continuity glitches and the hiccups, because coming out of Grant Morrison's Superman and the Authority, there's not, obviously the continuity is a little bit wonky here with Superman with the gray hair and their attempts to explain it. I don't care about that. This story is really simple. Superman wants to protect the Phalosians, who are basically ancient Kryptonian refugees. They're being chained. They're slaves of Mongol, and he's going to do whatever it takes. And despite the fact that Superman is losing his powers, and he's losing more and more of his powers under a red sun, and Mongol is aware of that, he goes with the Authority to Warworld to do it. Extra gravitas is added to the fact that the Council of the United Planets is well aware of what's at stake here when Superman's going to Warworld. And there's a great scene where the various heads of intergalactic state are having a meeting of the United Planets, and you got the Tamaranians, and you got the Kuns, and you got the Daxamites, and you've got all the various well-known and lesser well-known alien races of the DC universe having a meeting, and they're deciding whether or not to help Superman. And of course, we know the one leader is corrupt, or likely in the back pocket of Mongol. And it's really tragic, but they go through the pros and cons of helping Superman. And the bottom line is unfortunately, cowardice wins the day. They're afraid of helping Superman on the off chance that Superman loses. And then, of course, they got to face Mongol alone. And it's really sad to see, but ultimately that's the decision they face. There does seem to be some signs that there are other people on the United Planets Council that feel differently and maybe working behind the scenes that will ultimately help Superman. But really the highlight of this issue is just the battle sequences alone, and just this is very visceral. For those of us, this is Warworld Saga Part 2, so this is kind of like the worst kept secret. Obviously, this is the beginning of the tale. We know from Future State that Superman ultimately ends up being part of becoming almost like a permanent gladiator of Warworld. So we know that in this first altercation with Mongol in this arena, we know that Superman is likely going to lose if you've been reading Future State. So I'm not really giving any spoilers away there, but the manner in which this first loss for Superman and the Authority takes place, the visceral nature of it, the violence of it, it really has an impact. I felt it. I mean, it was just like, there's a point here where Mongol, takes a pretty serious blow against Superman. I felt it, and just the words and the dialogue was excellent. I think Phillip Kennedy Johnson nailed the characters of the Authority. These are characters that they're facing. Superman has bit off more than he could chew here. Superman clearly, even though he knew it was a trap, Superman knew it was a trap. Batman, everybody told he was a trap. Superman knew it. The Justice League knew it. Everybody knew it. And yet he had to go in alone with a team he wasn't familiar with. And everything that he has feared, everything that we Superman fans have feared has come to fruition. They are simply outmatched and outclassed in this first battle against Mongol and his new team of supervillains. And the manner in which it plays out, the action sequences, the loss, the seeming loss of life. It looks like Apollo may be taken off the playing field. Superman is badly injured, to say the least. This is just one beautiful, gorgeous action sequence. The scenes are just, this is so much fun to read, and it's gut wrenching. And boy, oh boy, do I want to come back for more. And this is in terms of action, this is already, I can tell you, this is one of my top 2 pick of the week. I have another one, which I'll get to, but I really enjoyed this. I think Superman's firing on all cylinders now. I'm just loving this, and I just can't wait, because one thing, when superheroes lose this badly, you know that when they come back and win, it's going to be that much more epic, or at least that's the feeling I have and the hope that I have. And there's that word hope. I can't believe I'm saying word hope in conjunction with there's hopelessness in this issue, but all the reason why I'm feeling hope that Superman's gonna come back from this stronger than ever. And we know ultimately Phillip Kennedy Johnson is pretty much, he's strongly hinted at that on Twitter. But anyways, I really enjoyed this. What'd you think?
Yeah, it was pretty solid. I didn't enjoy it as much as you. Um, and there's various reasons for that. It's more personal preference. I think, or I guess I would say, uh, yeah, it's not a big surprise when you talk about the politics of this UN Council, United Planets, whatever. It's kind of sad and cynical that that's what always happens. You think about the United Planets in terms of Legion of Superheroes and the future of the DC universe. It's supposed to be something, to your point, hopeful, where people can get things done, but you get people together, whether they're human or not, other alien races, and they can never choose the right thing. Everybody's always, and again, it's sort of a cynical outlook from Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Everybody's out to cover their own butts. Um, but it does seem like the leader of the council may, just based on it's not a smile when Superman dies at the end and everybody realizes that, one of them, they walk away saying, may God forgive us for not choosing to help Superman. And it's sort of a little smirk on his face. So you wonder if he's maybe working with Mongol in some way. So yeah, it's a cynical take for sure. And I sort of could do without that. I could do without those politics of it. I guess maybe Philip Kennedy Johnson felt the need to put it in there because people would wonder, well, why aren't other people helping Superman? Well, because then you can't tell the story that he wants to tell, right? Same reason the Justice League didn't come along. It's got to be this inexperienced team that Superman put together, and we see what happens to Superman himself. Will he survive? And that sort of thing. So, I've talked about it a lot, how I feel like the story is a little bit derivative of the Exile storyline from way back in the day that Roger Stern did, but I'm willing to give it a chance. The art from Miguel Mondoka is absolutely gorgeous. Colors from Adriana Lucas are very nice as well. So it's a very beautiful comic. Probably the second best. There's one other comic that probably tops this in terms of line work and artwork this week. Um, but yeah, it's a great comic. It's action filled. It's certainly, like to Rocky's point, lipstick on a pig. We're leaving that Bendis era behind and moving into a more um, traditional superhero or Superman comic. The one thing I wonder, you talk about, well, we know what's going to happen to some extent because of Future State and the War World storyline there. But here's what's interesting. So we also could say that we know what's going to happen in Batman because of the Magistrate storyline that we saw in Future State Gotham. Again, Future State were possible futures that could come to pass, but maybe wouldn't. Well, we're going to talk about Batman Fear State Omega in a little bit here, and we're going to see, and we've already covered other books where we see Simon Saint got thrown in jail. The Magistrate got stripped of its power. So we already are not going to see that future, the future of Gotham City controlled by the Magistrate. That's already gone by the wayside. So we already know that possible future is not going to happen. So I bring it up just to say, we think we know what's going to happen. We think Superman's going to lose, but you never know at what point the story's going to veer off, and it's
Yeah.
not going to be the Future State War World storyline. Obviously, it hasn't veered off yet. We're just barely getting started here.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's a good
so
point because a lot of the other storylines in some of the other DC titles for Future State, they haven't come to fruition. So yeah, it's a good point.
yeah, they've already veered off. So at what point does this veer off? I will say this. In terms of the characterization for the rest of the Authority, this is my favorite issue of getting a chance to see how this team works and interacts. Really like uh, the characterization Phil gives us um, for Apollo, for Manchester Black, even the Enchantress. Nobody gets a whole lot of screen time, but they all get a little bit. And I liked the feel and the reactions and just, sort of the character acting that he gave the Authority, because it really helped sell the events of the issue and just how impactful they are. So yeah, based on what happened to Superman, and we heard rumors, oh, Superman's going to die, that they're going to kill him in Warworld, and Phil Johnson's pushing back on that and saying, no, that's not actually what's going to happen, but I can't tell you what's going to happen because I would be spoiling it. But it's definitely an epic story. So, like I said, I didn't enjoy it as much as Rocky, but it is a solid issue, and the art is top notch from Miguel Mendoza. I really love the Martian Manhunter story as well. That was in the back of the book. Um, we're getting somebody named the Human Flame that may or may not be sort of a nemesis for Martian Manhunter. I mean, he is a Martian, so he is susceptible to fire. Um,
Well, the human
but it,
flame. Bear in mind, the human flame in the pre-final crisis, it was the human flame's desire to kill Martian Manhunter, and Libra, the multiversal Libra, killed
that's right.
Martian Manhunter to fulfill the human flame's desire. So, human flame, we saw him quite a bit in pre-final crisis back in the day.
Yeah, it's a good point because we just saw Libra in the pages of Deathstroke Incorporated.
That's right.
So
Yeah. So there
I
might be
wonder.
some link there. Who knows?
Yeah. So, but anyway, I mean, it feels like this might be somewhat of a detective type story, which again, that suits John Jones, Martian Manhunter. He is very much a detective. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It did a good job of humanizing him right from the start too. I feel like he's a very underrated character. He gets solo titles and they never last that long because the sales aren't that great, and I don't understand why. Because he's such a for being a Martian, he is one of the most human characters in the DCU in terms of
Yeah.
emotion and how much he cares about his teammates in the Justice League and whatnot. So I don't know. I've
That's
always thought he was
ironic. It's
great.
ironic, but yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
it
It's
really
true.
is. Yeah, and he's got all the same powers as Superman, plus he can turn invisible and has mental powers as well. Like, yeah, he should be more popular. But
Yeah, I just want to make one comment too about this backup feature as well. What I find artist Adriana Melo, I find her art here actually much better than her art in Wonder Girl
oh
this
yeah,
week, and I don't know why, but Adriana Melo's art on Wonder Girl just has just consistently, it just hasn't been up to task for me. But I know she's a better artist, and this backup feature proves it. I mean, I find the level of detail and backgrounds here to be better than the one her artwork in Wonder Girl. But that's just an
well, you know what?
observation. People can
Yeah,
judge for themselves. But
what's interesting is so this is the Wonder Girl issue that comes out today is the first issue that Adriana Melo drew before they were all written and drawn by Joelle Jones. And I feel like Adriana Melo, and I was going to mention this when we get to Wonder Girl, she used a thicker line, like her line weights are way heavier, and it's almost like she was trying to draw in the style of Joelle Jones
yeah,
rather than in her own style, which
yeah,
is what this is, which is what she did on Plastic Man, for
yeah,
example,
I,
with Gail Simone. But yeah,
yeah,
on Wonder Girl, it doesn't work. But we'll talk about that when we get there.
sure.
Anything else to add about Martian Manhunter, Rocky?
Not really. I like Martian Manhunter, and this is actually just for the human flame, and because I remember. I mean, I got the hardcover of Final Crisis. Every now and then I go back and reread it because it's Grant Morrison, and I always forget what I read, and he's hard enough to understand at the best of times, Morrison. But it is the lead into Final Crisis was an epic story, and Libra and the human flame and the death of Martian Manhunter, and that's all classic DC stories leading into crises, and and this human flame looks cooler here than he ever did in the past. He looks like he lost his pot belly because he was kind of a fatter character, but this is a much cooler look for human flame. He's definitely gotten an upgrade.
Yeah, he definitely has. So,
Yeah.
all right. Up next, we have Batman the Detective #6. This is the end of the miniseries from writer Tom Taylor, Andy Kubert on pencils, Sandra Hope on inks, Brad Anderson on colors, and Clem Robbins on letters. I have sort of mixed feelings about this. It was great to get Tom Taylor's take on a Batman, and this is an older, more grizzled Batman. Um, he even talks in the beginning, and we see him without his shirt on, and he's got a lot of scars and everything. And it was tying into Batman's past with Honoré Ducar, and there was a lot to like about it. The art from Andy Kubert, it's not my favorite Andy Kubert art. It's almost like he was trying to get down and dirty, and Batman's almost like a John Romita Jr. Batman, like John Romita Jr. was drawing him in All Star Batman, where he's sort of blocky and bigger, and I don't know if that's how he's trying to show his age. But ultimately, it was an interesting story, if not a little anticlimactic. We found out the origin of this Equilibrium last issue, how somebody that Batman saved got drunk and ran into the car that she was in with her husband and her husband and daughter died. And so she blames Batman for, she calls him an agent of chaos, and anything that anybody does that Batman saved shouldn't have happened. And so her goal is to go out and kill anybody that Batman's ever saved, including the entire city of London, right? So she buys all these surplus military drones, and she's going to bomb London. And how does Batman stop it? Well, he just calls up his good friend Oracle, and she just, with a few keystrokes, everything's fine. No bombing of London. It was very anticlimactic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if it had been some other kind of far-fetched kind of thing, we'd be sitting here going, well, why didn't he just call Oracle? Oracle could have just... So I can see it both ways, But I think where the story really shines, though, is in the interactions between Batman, that sort of triangle there of you have Batman on one point, you have Equilibrium on one point, you have Henri Ducard on one point. And in a way, Henri, he also trained Equilibrium to be this assassin. She was a mercenary for a long time before she put that life behind her and finally found happiness with her husband and then had the daughter. And that's why she was so distraught when her family was taken from her. So they're all different points on a triangle, and their relationships between each other are fascinating. And that's where this book really shines, especially at the end when you see Batman in his way feeling responsible for Equilibrium. Certainly, he doesn't feel like he shouldn't have saved that guy that then went on to make a bad choice and, killed Equilibrium's daughter. But he feels for her. I mean, he lost his parents, right? He lost the two people closest to him. So he sympathizes with her. Henri Ducard feels like he's responsible, and, he's Henri Ducard. So he's going to find the final solution for this, right? He's going to kill Equilibrium. And then Equilibrium, even herself, once she realizes, oh, wait, you're right, Batman saved my life. Now that means I have to kill myself. Like, just the thinking, like, that's fascinating. And then, of course, Batman again saves her. And, he sticks his hand out and catches a bullet point blank, like covers the muzzle, right? And his hand doesn't get blown off. I was kind of like, I don't know about that. But at least Henri Ducard, at least he acknowledges it.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's Tom Taylor acknowledging it. And he says, I'm guessing you shattered your hand into a lot of pieces? Because Henri's like, you think you're going to stop every bullet? Well, I stopped that one, that she was going to blow her own head off. Yeah, but you shattered your hand into a million pieces. So at least Tom Taylor acknowledged it. He probably came up with the idea and thought, this will be really cool. And it's a great image from Andy Kubert, but it was a little far-fetched. It immediately took me out of the story. I was like, wait, what did he do? He's not Superman, Like, I get you have a Kevlar glove or something, but you still have the force. You still have the explosion of the gunpowder. So, yeah, but at least, again, it was acknowledged. So overall, I feel like this was a good Batman story, not a great Batman story. I first heard Tom Taylor was doing it, and I was called The Detective. I had really high hopes. It didn't end up being I don't want to say groundbreaking, but I don't know, maybe not as impactful as I thought it would be. I mean, I love the fact that we got Henri Ducard because we don't get enough of him, and he's such a pivotal person in Batman's origin. And I thought the Equilibrium villain was, good motivation, good villain. So overall, it was good, maybe not great. But I could see myself going back and rereading this. Probably not something I'd reread like once a year or so, but yeah, maybe once every couple of years, sit down and give it a read. I think reading it all together in one sitting, the pacing would be pretty good, and it would probably flow pretty fast. So overall, I'd say it was pretty solid. What do you think, Rocky?
I agree with you 100%. I think this is going to make an excellent trade. I love this ending. Taylor nailed this ending for me. This was a little bit tropey. You identified some scenes. It was kind of convenient in parts, suddenly, in fact, Oracle even mentioned it was a surprisingly easy hack when she hacked into the drones and reprogrammed the drones away from Equilibrium in favor to aid Batman. There's a couple of scenes that were my favorite. One in particular was when Ducard mentioned that Equilibrium was a better student than Batman because she had one edge over Batman, and that is she could Charlotte, this who's Equilibrium. She actually has friends, and whereas Batman has assets, Equilibrium has friends, and I found it interesting at the end that you know Ducard almost criticized. He meant that as a criticism of Batman, that Batman doesn't have as many, that he never made friends, whereas Equilibrium made friends, but Batman didn't. And yet, in the very next scene, Batman is literally talking with the European alliance of the Bat. I mean, so really, as Batman, isn't it? The irony is that Batman considers them assets, but he, in many ways, Batman protects his assets as if they are his best friends, because Batman will give his life for a single asset. So in many ways, it's a little bit of a it's not entirely accurate to say that, well, Batman has no friends. Well, maybe he doesn't per se, like he's not a touchy-feely kind of guy, but when you're one of Batman's assets, he gives his life for you. So that's a pretty big thing too. And the other thing that I thought was a surprisingly touching moment, at least for me, but when Ducart was dying, what Batman said to him, I just sort of touched my heart. Batman, on the off chance that Ducart was going to die, he said, he reminded him, every time I got to a crisis in time, Ducart, you were with me. Every time I just barely made it. Every time I pulled off the impossible as Batman, it was because of you. It was because of your training. And it was Batman, just telling Ducart that. And of course, just when you think Ducart's going to die, a fantastic scene of Batman driving that Batmobile right off the bridge and landing right on the boat where Ducart is. I mean, this has a cinematic feel to it. I mean, I'm reading this and I just got a shit-eating grin on my face again, man. And that's what I love about this stuff. And the art by Andy Kubert feels so kinetic and just visceral and action-packed. And I just really enjoyed this. And even at the end there, and you nailed it when Batman even saves Equilibrium's life, and of course because he saved her life, she tries to kill herself because anyone who Batman saves has to die, and Batman doesn't allow that to happen. I mean, I really like this, and even at the ending there, where Batman reunites Squire with her mother, and it was the Squire's mother who ironically was the one who actually ended up saving the life of the drunk that took the life of Equilibrium's family. So there was that connection there. So there were some narrative tethers that were tied up neatly by Tom Taylor at the end of this. This was a beautiful story. I liked this. I thought it tied things up nice. I got some good feelings of Frank Miller vibes in spots, and it wrapped things up nice. And even though it was only for a few panels, I love seeing an older Nightwing, Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon together helping out Batman. Overall, a pretty good comic.
Yeah, so much Ducard. I sort of feel like, man, if we don't have Alfred right now, it would be fun to see Ducard come over and fill that
That's
role.
A great idea. That's a great idea.
To be a different dynamic, and then maybe Ducard would finally say, "You're just not willing to do what it takes to clean up Gotham, Batman," and then he would leave.
Yeah,
that's
a really good idea.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it would be a retcon in term because this is in the future when Batman's older, but it just I don't know. I love Henry Ducard as a character. I want more of him.
Can you imagine Henry Ducard trying to make cucumber sandwiches for Batman in the Batcave? I don't know if that would go over well, but I think that would be actually kind of funny. I mean, imagine a physically injured Ducard that needs to do something else and he's bored. And what better job? What more active kind of job can you imagine if you're going to be retired than being Batman's butler? What the hell?
He would just bring a tray that had a loaf of bread and a cucumber on it, nothing sliced. He's like, take a bite of the cucumber, then take a bite of the bread, whatever. It all ends up in the same place anyway.
Yeah. Oh, good.
All right, let's move on. Batman Fair State Omega #1 from writer James Tynion. Several artists on here. The main sort of framework story is by Riccardo Federici, Christian Duce, Ryan Benjamin, Guillaume March, and Trevor Hairsine each get their own turn to do little vignettes in the story. Chris Sotomayor on the colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. And then at the end it says Arkham Tower rises in Detective Comics 1047, because at the end of the book, I'll start with the end first. This person shows up, and she shows up in a few different Batman-centric titles this week. Dr. Chase Meridian, played by the what's her name? Nicole Kidman. In the Val Kilmer Batman movie.
That's where that's from. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, so way back in 1995 or 96, whenever that movie came out. And he drops the Scarecrow off at this new what they're saying will be Arkham Tower, although they're still talking about what it might be named. I'm still hoping they're going to name it Pennyworth Tower, but we'll see. But that's where we see Arkham Tower. That's a big storyline that's going on. We've seen a lot of it being developed, especially in books this week. The Riccardo Federici art, we talked about this last time. He's known mostly, especially for his DC work, as a cover artist, but he did Batman Alpha or Batman Fear State Alpha, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I'm like, why doesn't this guy do more interiors? Well, probably because he's probably slow based on the sort of intricate character acting, background, and sort of shading that he does. But man, just gorgeous, wonderful storytelling. And then so basically what's happening is they're getting ready to transport Scarecrow. He has a plan to break out. Batman's one step ahead of him, throws him in the Batmobile and says, I'll take you to, the new Arkham, whatever, myself. And as they're driving through on their way to Arkham Tower, we get sort of this recap and epilogue, right? Like, here's what happened in Fear State. Here's kind of the status of everything. Here's a little follow-up of things that you might not have known. For example, Miracle Molly testified against Simon Saint and made a deal that she would go to prison and take the rap for all the robberies that the Insanity Collective performed. The rest of the Insanity Collective goes free. Simon Saint gets put behind bars because of the testimony of Miracle Molly, and Miracle Molly goes behind bars too. Again, I think there's a lot to Miracle Molly. I think she's a good character. I hope we see more of her. We get a little vignette about the cleanup of the Magistrate Skybase from Gotham Harbor. We're reminded that Simon Saint's been removed from the board, and the board of Saint Industries is actually shuttering the Magistrate brand, but that probably just means it's going underground. Meanwhile, there's hints. The board, Saint Industries board, is moving to have Saint put on house arrest so he can work off his debt to society, working for the U.S. military. And when they say that, we see Amanda Waller, which, again, I thought Amanda Waller was persona non grata out hiding somewhere, but again, forget about that continuity. I'd be all for Saint going onto the Suicide Squad if it means that he doesn't survive the experience. We also see that, to nobody's surprise, Peacekeeper 1, Sean Mahoney escapes when they try to remove all the equipment from him. I think he's a terrible tropey character. I would have been fine never seeing him again after Future State, but I guess somebody thinks he has some worth, so he's got to escape into the sewers of Gotham or what have you. So we haven't seen the last of him. We get a little bit of screen time for those people that are shippers of Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, and Catwoman basically Catwoman has a conversation with the gardener, and they sort of recap some of what's gone on in terms of the Harley Ivy storyline, and then Poison Ivy confronts Gardner about why she split off that part of Ivy in the first place. And it doesn't happen in this issue. I think it's actually the Gotham City Villains, but we get hints of a lot more action for Poison Ivy to come. And then, and all of that is fine. I didn't really have a problem with any of these storylines per se. But then we get to the little cleanup of the Clown Hunter. Again, terrible character. I don't care for him at all. The first thing I noticed is he's almost as tall as Batman when Trevor Hairsine draws him. And that shouldn't be a thing because he's always been very, very short. So that bugged me right away. But then we're told that he's going to be trained by Ghostmaker. And the reason he agrees to do it is because he doesn't have to use his crappy bat anymore. Ghostmaker's going to teach him how to use a sword. Okay. Yeah. Again, a character that I could sort of live without. So this wasn't at all what I expected. We talked about other storylines, especially with the Anti-Oracle still being up in the air, and would it get resolved in Batman Fear State Omega? It doesn't. This is just sort of cleanup and tying up some strings that maybe you didn't even realize were still dangling. But at the same time, it was enjoyable. It was great to kind of put a bow on Fear State for the most part, and wrap it all up and give Joshua Williamson, the next writer of Batman, more of a clean slate to work with. So I thought that it worked. Having the different artists do the different parts of the story worked as well because it doesn't seem so disparate. Because a couple of the artists here, like this is definitely not Trevor Hairsine's best work. It feels very, very rushed. The rest of the art I thought was pretty serviceable, although again none of it lives up to the Riccardo Federici art, which is absolutely spectacular. But yeah, so overall it was solid. I almost feel like we could have had Fear State Alpha and then Fear State Omega and skipped everything in between. But maybe that's just me. So I don't know. What do you think of this one, Rocky?
Well, I'm going to be a little less. I'm going to be a little bit more critical of it. I thought this was it. I guess it's you're right when you say it's a little bow on the story of Fear State. But the thing is, if you're not a big fan of Fear State, the people who aren't a fan of Fear State, this might just help restore the status quo. Frankly, I didn't need none of the information provided in this comic. I didn't find any of it necessary. I frankly, I pretty much assumed everything that occurs in this comic, except for I didn't think that Clown Hunter would be trained by Ghostmaker. I think that's a really stupid idea. I don't think Ghostmaker would tolerate Clown Hunter, to be honest. The rest of it, as far as Miracle Molly, I thought Miracle Molly would sort of escape into the ether. I would prefer her escaping than anything else. But again, that's not a big deal. So she paid for her crime. As for the rest of it, Simon Saint, I mean, we didn't, it probably, we didn't need to know that Simon Saint might end up working for Amanda Waller. That could have just been a nice surprise in the pages of Suicide Squad. None of this was definitely an issue that people can skip. I personally would not recommend this, especially this week where there's like 8 different Bat-related titles out. If you're budgeting your money, I would not recommend that people get Fear State Omega. It's absolutely unnecessary with respect to knowing. You don't need to know any of the information in here. None of this is crucial for moving forward with Batman. In my view, I don't think it's, none of this is provided information that I was really dying to know or that I was asking. I was actually wondering what on earth this would be about. And then I just found out that, oh, well, Miracle Molly goes in prison for a while. Okay. Clown Hunter is going to be trained by Ghostmaker. Well, okay. Simon Saint is arrested and he might end up with Amanda Waller. Well, okay. And Batman has some long, and even this, and I realize it's the present day Batman, but Batman is not the type of guy that's going to get into a car and get talky-feely with Scarecrow. I don't know. I guess I'm being maybe really nitpicky here, but the thing, I just thought this whole thing felt a little bit forced. I didn't need this, but I'll leave it at that. It does wrap things up in a nice little bow, but definitely for those people that weren't fans, if you weren't fans of Fear State to begin with, this is an absolute miss. And even if you were fans of Fear State, this isn't a necessity. Great art, though. Great art.
Yes, that was going to be my point. If you're a fan of Riccardo Federici, then I mean that's the reason to pick this up.
Yes,
that's the best thing about the issue, is that art. It is fantastic. To me, that's the reason to pick it up.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on. Hardware Season 1, Number 3, Silent Partners, written by Brandon Thomas. Pencils are by Dennis Cowan. Bill Sienkiewicz does the inks. Chris Sotomayor on colors. Rob Lee does the letters. What do you think of this one, Rocky? I'm wondering if we're on the same page.
I apologize, but this is one where you're gonna have to go first, and I'll try to skim read it. I never had time to read this. There's 17 titles, and too many Batman titles. And this goes to my earlier point, and maybe it's all on me, but I skipped this title because I wanted to read up and read all my Batman, and this was one of the ones. This is the only one I never read.
Okay, so this is by far the weakest of the 3 milestone titles. And that's not to say that it's not good or it doesn't have potential. And certainly when we're talking Brandon Thomas, Dennis Cowan, Bill Sienkiewicz, Chris Sotomayor, we're talking about some very talented people. The problem, I feel like, is in the pacing of the story. There clearly are some ideas that Brandon Thomas has that it feels like he wants to get to, but he is trying to stay true to the origins of Hardware as a character, just like Static stays true to those characters and Icon and Rocket stays true to those characters. But this just feels rushed. It feels like it's moving really fast to get to something. And maybe at the end here, we start to get some ideas of what that might be. Maybe this book's going to become a little more political than it should be. So I have mixed feelings. Like I want to like it more than I do, but we're 3 issues in, we're halfway through, and I still feel like I'm not quite sure what this book wants itself to be. Is it a book where it's a man on the run? It's Hardware trying to escape from Alva. Is it more of a situation where it's that Iron Man prototype where it's a guy in his armor against the world and he's gonna um, become the hero that everybody needs him to be? Is it a political book with the machinations that are going on behind the scenes? When I'm talking about how we see it that toward the end, so basically we're told at the beginning about Edwin Alva and his partner Asher Sim, who founded the company that Asher that Asher currently runs, and we're supposed to have some context, I guess you would say, for what's going on, and we learned that Alva and Asher had a falling out at some point, and that was when Alva went and recruited Curtis Metcalf because it's implied that Edwin Alva was always sort of the business mind, sort of the cunning, stab you in the back kind of intelligence, but not actually the like tech expertise. That was what Sim did, and that's why he recruited Curtis Metcalf when he and Sim had a falling out. And now Curtis is on the run, like we've seen the last couple of issues, and Alva's publicly saying he doesn't blame him for anything, for what went wrong, even though everything has been framed to look like it's all Metcalf's fault. But behind the scenes, obviously, Alva's trying to kill him or at least capture him. And so when Curtis eventually goes and tracks down Asher Sim as sort of an ally, at the end, it's all flipped around when Edwin Alva calls Asher Sim. They talk for the first time in decades. And Edwin says, I'll give you the one thing that you said that I would never give back to you, which is the source code. That's all we're told. It's the source code. And apparently this is the thing that they had a falling out over. Like Sim created some sort of, Asher Sim created some sort of source code. And apparently there was a disagreement with the way it was going to be used. Sim probably didn't want to use it for weapons. Alva probably did because he's all about money and power. Somehow Alva stole it, forced Sim out, and Alva said he would never give it back. Now he's offering it back if Sim will give up Curtis Metcalf. Meanwhile, Curtis Metcalf's working in Sim's lab, unbeknownst that these other two are even talking, with Alva saying, you have 48 hours to give me Metcalf, and I'll give you the code. Or if that's not your answer in 48 hours, I'll just come and take Metcalf and you'll get nothing. So again, doubling down on sort of the corporate espionage, political machinations of this whole book. But then we still have the superhero aspect. We still have the armor aspect. We still have Curtis Metcalf's girlfriend and ex-wife, and that. Look, there's just so much going on, and it feels overstuffed, and it feels like any one of these storylines would be enough if you let them breathe to be compelling and pull somebody in. But like I said, we're 3 issues in, and I still don't know what this book wants to be. Like I feel like there's a little too much going on. So I don't know. I want to like it more than I do. And maybe when it's all said and done, Brandon Thomas will manage to bring it all together. But it does sort of feel rushed at this point. Like maybe this is a 12-issue thing that is only getting 6 issues.
Yeah, it's
I mean, we
funny.
heard the
Listen,
same thing when we talked to Andy Schmidt, right, about
yeah.
Crime Syndicate, and we've heard similar things from Brandon Thomas himself when he was on the show about having to cut things out that he wishes would be there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's
I
I
got to
want to
tell
like it
you,
more than I do.
listening to hear you talk, it's I'm definitely going to read it. I just didn't have time to read it, but I'll read it. It actually sounds interesting. I mean, I can tell you, even your synopsis sounds more interesting than at least 3 of the Batman books I read this week. So I regret not reading this first. I apologize to Brandon Thomas. It was just one of those things, uh, you know, frustrating week. But I will read this. I will read this. I'll give this.
Yeah,
I promise I'm gonna when I'll review issue 4. I'll give some lip service to this issue as well when I review issue 4.
yeah. I'm curious. I'm curious if it ends up working for you better than me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on. Batman 2021 Annual #1. This is written by James Tynion as well. But Ricardo Lopez Ortiz also gets credit as a storyteller as well as the artist. Romulo Fajardo Jr. does the colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. And this is the end of the Ghostmaker story that we're getting as backups in the Batman title at one point with the whole Midas Island thing and whatever. I'm not a big fan of this art. I said that from the beginning when we were getting the backups. We get a little more of the background of Ghostmaker, a little bit about his parents and where he came from. But the art is really messy, and I feel about this the way that you feel about the Fierce State Omega. Like, I never felt like the backups were necessary, although they were a little bit humorous, and it sort of was giving some context and characterization to Ghostmaker. But I feel like we didn't get much more context or characterization. Like, this didn't add anything for me. Like, we had to have this, right? Because we had to get the end of that story. But all the backups and this didn't feel necessary to me.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we could have somehow got the information that was, I think, the most interesting about Ghostmaker, the fact that he flies around in a plane and he's sort of sexually debauched. We could have got that dropped in somewhere else, because those were the interesting parts that gave us some context into the character of Ghostmaker. This battle that he has against this gauntlet of supervillains on Midas Island, it felt overwrought and unnecessary. And this wasn't even as funny as a lot of those other backups were, even though part of the same story. The only funny part for me, or only line that really stood out for me, was when he's talking to Batman, because that's how we get the end of the story. He's telling Batman the story, and at one point Batman's interrupted him and he says, "Quiet, Batman. You'll get distracted and drop a child in the fire. Just listen." That was the only line that really got me. Other than that, it was forgettable. I feel like I already sort of forgotten it. And yeah, the artwork was messy in my mind and didn't really work for me. So I don't know. Did you like it better than I did, Rocky?
I was a little disappointed in it, and the reason that the central reason for my disappointment is, number one, it was very repetitive, because this is the concluding saga of the Ghost Maker's origin story is really what this is. And we had a whole series of backup stories of Ghostmaker where in each one of the Ghostmaker, the backups in the pages of Batman over the last 6 months, we got the origins of Kid Kawaii, Razorline, Brainstorm, and the Instigator, and Madame Midas, who are basically Ghostmaker's arch enemies. So we got the backup stories of their origins, and in this issue, we kind of got a recap of their origins again. It was like we could have got the entire. What was the point of having those backups? We could have taken $1 off the price tag of those previous Batman stories, and we could have just had a cool Batman annual with the Ghostmaker story in it. And it just seemed like such a waste to me. And even the look, I don't mind Lopez Ortiz on the art. I think I think it's got that anime kind of feel to it, which I'm not normally a fan of, but it grew on me. Fajardo Jr. on the colors, I thought it worked well. I have to admit, I was a little bit confused with some of the action sequences. I didn't really exactly know what went on. I was a little confused in parts. So the art, maybe it's just me not accustomed to the art, but I didn't quite grasp exactly what was going on in every single panel. But look, the gist of it came through, but it does feel a little Deus Ex Machina, because this feels oversimplistic to me. The origin of Ghostmaker, basically the Ghostmaker, when he grew up, his dad owned a company that was taken over by Madame Midas's dad, and basically Ghostmaker grows up to get revenge on Madame Midas, because Madame Midas treated him bad when he was a kid, because Madame Midas Madame Midas's father was the richest man on the earth, and Madame Midas became the richest person on earth after her father, and because her father destroyed his family, Ghostmaker grows up to destroy her. That's really it. So it's a really, really simplistic origin. There's nothing sophisticated about it at all. It's very tropey, and not only does he defeat all his nemesis, Ghostmaker defeats every single one handily. He defeats his greatest enemies. He defeats them all. Kid Kawaii, Razorline, Brainstorm, Instigator, Madame Midas. And to top it off, while he's fighting them, he makes a couple phone calls, reports her to 20 Interpol agencies across the globe, and all her assets are seized, and she's no longer broke, or she's no longer rich. And so it's a complete destruction of his enemy. This was Duke Ex Machina, and almost to the point of, really, I don't think even Batman's ever defeated his enemy that completely before. This was an abject humiliation of Madame Midas. It actually took away some of the agency of Madame Midas. She was actually kind of an interesting character, I thought at first, but she ends up being just a one-note, sort of boring, rampaging, like almost maniacal, foolish female that lacked any kind of potential agency on her own here. And I think some opportunities were lost, all in some vain attempt to make prop Ghostmaker up when you didn't have to. We already know Ghostmaker's extremely competent. We know that from Batman. But this storyline actually makes him almost a little bit too over the top, I think. So I don't think this served the character as much as Tynion hoped it would. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, more Batman, because, yeah, like we said, over 17 books, over half of them Batman. So next up we have Detective Comics Annual 2021, The Meager Man, A Shadows of the Bat Prelude from writers Marika Tamaki and Matthew Rosenberg. David Lapham does the art, colors by Trish Mulvihill and Lee Luffridge, letters by Ariana Mayer. This was sort of forgettable. Yes, it is A Shadows of the Bat, which is supposedly the next big Bat event that's coming up next year. It is a prelude to that. It even says on the end, beginning in Detective Comics 1047, Shadows of the Bat, a weekly Detective Comics event beginning this January. We also see Dr. Chase Meridian in this issue, although she doesn't, if you didn't know, if she didn't actually say what her name is, you wouldn't recognize her because she doesn't look what she looks like in the other book that we talked about. But it gets me wondering if these two issues that are coming, are these her first appearances, I wonder? Did she ever appear back in the 90s? I don't know. But anyway, this story basically is about this guy who is the son of somebody who Thomas Wayne saved, who had taken a bunch of hostages and then jumped through a window and right in front of Thomas and Martha Wayne and Bruce Wayne as a child. And even though he had killed people, Thomas Wayne saved him. And then it was a lesson to little Bruce Wayne about, you save the people that are in front of you. Years and years later, his son, who has all kinds of mental issues based on the fact that his dad was all jacked up, is having some problems as well, and they ultimately end up taking him again to that new Arkham Tower rather than locking him up. And there's a lot of politics in here with the police who want to throw the guy in Blackgate and lock him away forever. And Nightwing's more playing the role of, being far out to the other side, saying, locking up these people isn't the way to go. They need help. And then, Bruce is somewhere in the middle, sort of remembering that lesson that he learned from his dad so long ago about, because at first he's a little more on the side of the police, and he's a little harsher with this guy, and then he tells Nightwing at the end, yeah, I remember the lesson my dad taught me: you save the people that are in front of them. So what exactly this means for Shadows of the Bat, is it just all about Chase Meridian and Arkham Tower or whatever? I don't know. But again, this was just sort of a forgettable story. Like like when I started flipping through it to talk about it right now, I was like, wait, what was this about? And I had to flip through the pages before I even remembered. Oh yeah, okay. So without seeing the art and having it jog my memory, I wouldn't have been able to recap this. So clearly not that impactful, but maybe it'll mean more and have more context once Shadows of the Bat starts. I don't know. I guess we'll see. What'd you think, Rocky?
Yeah, this is I actually like the theme here. I liked I'm always big on the metaphor and the theme, and I like the idea that, you know, the lesson that Bruce Wayne remembers, one of the lessons that Bruce Wayne remembers that his dad taught him was, as a doctor, he says, I don't choose who I save the victim in front of me, which is exactly what you said. And it ends up that Peter Foss is a serial killer, and it just so happens that Thomas and Martha Wayne with young Bruce are walking down the street one day, and it just so happens they come across Peter Foss trying to escape from the police, and he jumps out of a he jumps through a window, and he ends up getting cut, his arm getting severed. And Peter Foss is a serial killer who would die. He would bleed out on the street, but Thomas Wayne saves him. So he saves this serial killer, and this serial killer, Peter Foss, believes that he believes that blood is a sacred right. And he says, you know, he likes to rob blood banks, and he believes that people who save blood are devils. And so he's crazy. And I couldn't help but notice that in artist David Lapham, the way that he draws as Peter Foss, he almost looks like he's got a grin, just like the Joker. He reminds me a little bit like the Joker. And at first, I thought maybe that was that intentional. Was this meager man sort of connected to the Joker? But I don't believe he is. But in any event, the idea of you treating the patient who's in front of you, Chase Meridian is in this issue, as you indicated. She is a big proponent of Arkham Tower, that might be called Pennyworth Tower at some point. And the idea is, you know, Bruce Wayne's a big proponent of that as well, to sort of save the people that you can, and that it's about saving the people who are right in front of you. And to Batman, that's the people of Gotham City. When you save the people that are right in front of you, to him, that's saving Gotham, your average Gotham citizen. And of course, Batman goes the step above. He also ends up saving all the villains too. But I like the idea that all of us, we all save the victim in front of us. We all do our part. I mean, Chase Meridian, she's a doctor. She saves her patients. If whatever we do, whatever field we're in, whether it's the service industry of any kind, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or a plumber, or a welder, or whatever we might be, we serve the person who comes to us for help. That's what we do. So the lesson here, I think it's very good. And we are all our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper. And I think that's what I like about the message of this story here. And it makes you feel good because Thomas and Martha Wayne, once again, another reminder that Bruce Wayne has really good parents. And despite the trauma that made Bruce Wayne Batman, he always had that upbringing, those formative years with two very good parents. And that's ultimately what puts Bruce Wayne, even as Batman, on the side of angels. And I thought it was good. As far as leading into Shadow of the Bat, the prelude to Shadow of the Bat, I'm actually, I don't know if I'm that interested in it, where I don't know what the storyline's really going to be. A lot of this stuff we've already seen before. We're introduced to the Forgotten, this group of children that consider themselves, they call themselves the Forgotten, and they befriend the meager man, this Peter Foss. This reminds me of the Strays. I mean, Catwoman in Alleytown, she's got the Strays. They follow Catwoman. And now we got another group of children in another part of Gotham called the Forgotten, and they're going to follow Peter Foss. It seems like this has kind of been redundant. Haven't we done a variation of this storyline already? I know that's common in a Batman comic, but this feels a little bit like we just so recently treaded this. I don't know how Shadow of the Bat's going to feel any different. And we'll have to wait and see what Marika Tamaki does with it.
Yep. Okay, moving on. We have Teen Titans Academy number 8 from writer Tim Sheridan. Micah Norton is the artist. Hi-Fi on colors. Rob Lee on letters. I gotta say, I vastly prefer Rafa Sandoval's art. Mike Norton, his art is just not dynamic enough for a superhero book, in my mind, especially one with so many different characters. But there's a lot that happens in this issue. And I'm going to let Rocky take it away and see what his thoughts are on it. What do you think, Rock?
Okay, woo! I got prepped in time here. Well, I'm happy to report that I did, in fact, read this comic. It's funny that you say that a lot happens in this issue. I actually have I only got one page of summary notes on this comic, and on big bold print at the bottom of that piece of paper, I have the phrase, a big nothing burger. That's how I summarize this comic. Now, let me explain that, because you're right that a lot does kind of happen in this issue. So why do I call this a big nothing burger? Well, because we kind of already knew what was going to happen. We kind of already knew that we knew that at some point the students of Teen Titans Academy, Gorilla Greg, Marissa's Brat Girl, and that they were going to be using the H style. We knew from the Future State Teen Titans Academy that they were going to steal Miguel's hero dial, H for hero dial, to try to resurrect Roy Harper. And we know from Future State that they were going to attempt to resurrect Roy Harper, and that was going to go terribly wrong. And I think the assumption was that the reason why it would go terribly wrong is because Roy Harper isn't really dead. So who exactly are they resurrecting if they're not resurrecting Roy Harper? And how does the H-style even work? And can the H-style mess with the dead? And that somehow would contribute to the unkindness and to all the destruction in the future. And wow, we had all these questions we don't know. Plus, we don't know who Red X is. So it was kind of like, we know that Future State's kind of going to be messy. So now we get this issue, Teen Titans number 8, and sure as heck, yes, they steal... Gorilla Greg and Marissa, Brat Girl, they steal the H-style and they're trying to use it. And, well, nothing happens. They don't actually use it. The bulk of the issue is the Flash drops off the twins. Wally West drops off Jay and Irie, his kids. He wants them to join Titans Academy. Okay, that's good. I'm actually glad to see that because one thing Titans Academy needs, it needs more familiar characters. Because once again, and you can accuse me of being an old guy with a fading memory, because that's probably what I am, accurate, but I'm always trying to remember who all these new characters are, and eventually maybe they'll become second nature to me, but I still find myself searching for the names of most of these students in Teen Titans Academy. And so it's good to see Jay and Irie going to be joining the Teen Titans Academy. Meanwhile, Miguel's being distracted. They steal the H-style. Dane we know Dane is kind of still a little bit off his rocker and possessed, and he's trying to hit on the Flash character, whose name, unfortunately, I also forget. Raven is talking about the visions she had about the unkindness, so she's referencing the vision she has that we know what happens because of Future State, that ultimately it's going to destroy the future. And so she has all these visions. She's got visions of Dane killing one of the students, and what I find extraordinary is, out of nowhere, Red X just shows up. He doesn't attack anybody, but he just shows up. And interestingly enough, he's actually drawn looking like a teenager. Now, this is a character who we don't know who this character is. We know this character can't be Roy Harper because Roy Harper also shows up out of the blue. So they're trying to resurrect Roy Harper with the H-style, and they fail. And then Miguel intercedes. And fortunately, apparently, they never used the H-style correctly, and so nothing came of it. Miguel got to the H-style before because they used it wrong, and so they never activated it. But then Roy Harper shows up anyway, so absolutely nothing came with them attempting to use the H-style. So all that was nothing. It was a nothing burger. That's the nothing burger. The H-style did nothing because they used it wrong. It was a giant miss, total nothing burger. And Red X here seems to be a nothing burger. Red X shows up out of the blue, trying to recruit the students to what? Join him? And go where? He's a teenager. I don't care if he's got Batman level intellect. Why would they go with Red X? I'm not really buying what this... I'm not sure exactly where Tim Sheridan is trying to take this story. But it just seems a little bit absurd to me. Starfire, I mean, all of them, they're all afraid of this teenager. I mean, who the hell is this teenager? I mean, even Wally West, he can think, Wally West is warned not to try to take out Red X because Red X is prepared, and so Red X is going to be there, and he's prepared to take out all the Titans if they try to stop him from giving a speech to the students. I'm sorry, but I'm just this whole thing just seems so off to me, and I'm not really getting what is Red X trying to do here. Red X shows up, gives a speech, and then leaves. And I don't know. The whole thing just... I'm not really sure exactly where this is going, because now the Future State thing with the H-style, that's kind of a nothing burger. We know that's going to go nowhere. And so we know Roy Harper shows up at the end. Okay, so now that Roy Harper shows up, all right, well, there's a big statue of Roy Harper in front of the school. So he's the inspiration of Titans Academy is now alive. So what now? So and Red X just shows up, gives a speech, and then leaves. Okay, I'm not sure. I wish I had some idea where Tim Sheridan was trying to take this story. If I even had an idea, maybe I could get more invested in it. But it's hard for me because this seems like it's going all over the place, and we got a bunch of nothing burgers. I don't know. Do you feel different?
No, that's exactly how I feel. It sounds like to me, Rocky, you want some answers. You
Yeah.
want some answers? I want some answers too. We're 8 issues in, right? We have all these different plot threads, and you're right. Like we haven't gotten all we get are more every issue, more questions, more questions, more questions. And as far as Red X showing up, I think he must like literally count pages in his script and literally put a big red X in the corner and say, Red X hasn't shown up in X amount of pages. Let me put him in here. It's exactly what we said we didn't want at the beginning, the very first issue of this, when we said, if this Red X thing drags out or he just pops in and out here and there for no reason whatsoever and just drags out the mystery, it's going to get old real fast. Well, it's starting to get old. I'm interested in these characters. I want to know what's going on. I want to know more about, other than the couple of Gorilla Greg focused spotlight issues that we got with him battling his uncle, Gorilla Grodd. We haven't learned that much about any of the rest of the characters. All of the characters stealing Miguel's hero dial, H dials, just felt really shitty to me to do that to somebody.
Yeah.
I get that okay, well, we want to know how it works. It's not yours. You don't just go steal stuff from your friends and hook it up and modify it and whatever. It felt shitty. So yeah, we nothing's happened. Not enough answers. I think Tim Sheridan has a plan, but it's in the execution. Like I don't, it's not paced correctly. Like at least you have to end some plot threads at some point. You got to give people a reason to keep coming back. If you just drag every plot thread and throw in, subplots and subplots and subplots, but you never get any answers or anything, people are going to just get tired of it. Like, you know what? I'll tune in a year from now and get caught up, or I'll just go read it on the internet or watch a YouTube to find out what happened, because I'm tired of reading and reading and reading and not getting any answers. So yeah, it's exactly how I felt when I finished reading. I'm like, man, we're eight issues in and nothing's been resolved. Instead, we just get more subplots. Like now we have Roy actually there at the academy named after him, and we get Wally showing up wanting his kids to go to the academy. So again, more threads when we haven't resolved any of the other ones. So yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I don't know who is this character that I'm looking at here with the talking dog Libowitz? Is she Primer? Is this
Yeah,
a
yeah.
PW
Primer.
character?
So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. So my that's not actually Primer. Primer does show up in another one of the early ones, and she's in her own YA that my daughter keeps bugging me that I need to read, because she's read it like
Is she the
3 or
Dreamer
4
or
times,
something? Is her name
and she
Dreamer
loves it.
or
So I can't. I'm trying to find her name, because yeah, she Whistle. I'm Whistle, and this is
Whistle?
Leibowitz.
Okay.
So she's just again, she's another student at the academy that we know next to nothing about.
Well, I just want to say the criticism again, and again, it's a broken. I'm saying it sounding like a broken record. I've said this before about this title. We should have the names of these characters underneath the characters when they appear, right from the beginning. I'm going to be referenced when we're going to be reviewing Justice League Incarnate #1 coming up in this video. And one thing Joshua Williamson wisely does there is that he's got the name of a multitude of characters. He's got the names of the characters underneath them as we're meeting them. And I still say we should have that for Teen Titans Academy, because I do think Tim Sheridan is assuming too much in the reader. And I guess I'll just leave it, and that's my opinion, because I shouldn't have to strain or have to look back at a comic to find out who these characters are.
Well, that's the problem. We have no context. How can you remember who somebody is when they've only showed up for a panel here or there?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a problem. All right, moving on. Justice League Dark 2021 annual #1 from Ram V and Dan Waters. Dan Waters handles the scripting. Ram V and Dan Waters both are on the story. Christopher Mitten does the art. Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors. Rob Lee on letters. I don't have a whole heck of a lot to say about this. I didn't like the Christopher Mitten art. It's I don't know. I just didn't like it. The style, it didn't have enough detail for me. The line work, like I feel like when you draw the curve of somebody's face, like it's not a straight line, but it shouldn't be like wavy. You know what I'm saying? Like it should at least be a smooth line. Like, but I don't know. So the art just didn't feel up to par for me. And we've been saying that Justice League Dark deserves its own title instead of just as a backup in the Justice League. So I appreciated that we got a big story here. We got a big chunk of story. We got basically a recap of everything that's been going on in the Justice League Dark backups with Merlin and whatnot. And then Mr. E shows up and they end up having to make a deal with the devil, so to speak, which at this point pretty tropey. Like I'm sorry, usually Ram V I gives us stories that I really really enjoy, and I guess maybe there wasn't any way around of it being tropey. But deal with the devil literally, like he Zatanna's gonna know better than that, and but she doesn't. But the other thing about it was, as long as this backup's been going on, and I really enjoyed it, much like we had the conclusion of the Ghostmaker story. I saw this, I was like, oh good, we're gonna get the conclusion of the Merlin story. Like not that it's been dragging on too long, but I want to know. But instead, at the end, after she makes this deal with Mr. E, after she makes this deal with the devil, it doesn't even say the end. We don't get the end of the story. It says the beginning. So how long is this going to drag on?
I know.
And is Justice League Dark going to get its own? Because I'm sorry, I like the story, but getting it like 5, 6, 7 pages at a time in the back of Bendis's Justice League is not, it's not cutting it for me. So I appreciated that we got a big chunk of story, but sort of like Teen Titans Academy, we got a recap, and then they made this deal with Mr. E, and that's literally all that happens in the issue. That is it. So yeah, it left a little to be desired in terms of, can we move this story along a little more? And again, I don't necessarily blame Ram V, because I certainly feel like if he was getting full issues instead of a third of an issue every month, maybe we would have the end of the story by now. So, but that combined with the art that I really didn't care for made this a little bit of a miss for me, unfortunately. What do you think, Rock?
I really hate to say it, but I think that this is going to be the nail in the coffin of people. If this is the deciding factor for whether or not people collect Justice League Dark, they're not going to be collecting Justice League Dark. The cover is fantastic. The cover is just eye-catching, beautiful cover. But this was a significant miss, because the Justice League Dark, the best part of the Justice League title was the Justice League Dark backups, but instead of having this Justice League Dark annual, they should have taken all 6 of those backups, which were 8 pages each, and have a 48-page story. That would have been fantastic. Also, the substance, the actual story in this annual could be summed up in no more than 6 to 8 pages. You could have had a 50, 60-page annual that could have covered all the backups and what happens here. The only thing that happens here, we get a summary of what we already know. Except the only difference is we have this Mr. E show up, and it's a fascinating character, and it's kind of funny and cool because he walks backwards. He got this Mr. E character is an enemy of Constantine, and he pissed off some cosmic being, and so he finds himself walking backwards through space-time into the now, into the present, and he's basically warning them that, he's got a piece of he's got a part of Merlin's good soul, because Merlin has been corrupted, because Merlin went into the afterlife and stole some nepenthe, what they call nepenthe, which was a liquid which deadens pain and strife and destroys lands. And Merlin's going to use this liquid to aid his destruction that we know is coming from Future State. And so really the only way that they can defeat Merlin is to infuse the better part of Merlin's soul back into him. And so Mr. E makes a deal with Zatanna. And Mr. E just says, look, I'll give you, because I walk backwards through time, I walk in the future, I walk backward, and I saw Merlin's soul before I saw his battle with Kuga Khan, where he lost the good part of his soul, and I happen to have it. I'll give you good part of Merlin's soul, and on and I'm going to make a deal with you. When you defeat Merlin, I want you to give me Merlin's ruby or whatever he has. And that's the deal they made. Now, it's another example of they're making a sort of a deal that they may have to, it's going to cost them in the long run. But they're dealing with one crisis at a time. But that really is it. And so that it really just ends with them getting a piece of Merlin's soul that they're going to use to defeat Merlin at some future point. This was 42 pages. This was way too long. The art was serviceable at best. I hate to say it. 42 pages long. 10 pages were wasted on Wonder Woman going in, telling a story about her walking into Tartarus to discover this nepenthe, the waters are forgetting. There's so much of additional baggage here in this story that Ram V didn't need to add. We don't need this extra superfluous, more magical side journeys of these characters. We don't need that. I think Ram V is overcomplicating this story. There's so many moving parts as it is, and it's interesting, but I fear that he's kind of lost the readers a little bit here. He's lost me a little bit. I mean, I kind of know what's going on, but it's frustrating. I got to tell you, man, it's telling when I do notes for these reviews, and when my Venn diagram starts to look like an architectural drawing, I mean, then I know that maybe these plot lines need to maybe pull them back a little bit. But again, I'm still in this for the long haul. But I do think that he bit off. I think he just sort of there's too much exposition here. This is a wasted issue, and I think this could have been handled better editorially. This should have just been one annual with all of the backup, the content of all of the backups, and this story in one.
Yep, agreed. Okay, up next, this is a big one. Justice League Incarnate #1. This is another one of those titles we feel like really need to pay attention to because this is the future of the DCU, supposedly, with Joshua Williamson at the helm. So this issue is written by Joshua Williamson and Dennis Culver. Brandon Peterson handles the art for pages 1 through 5 and 13 through 17. Andre Bresson handles the art for pages 6 through 12, 28 through 30. And then Tom Derenick does pages 18 to 27. Hi-Fi's on colors. Tom Napolitano's on letters. The art is pretty solid throughout. I didn't have any problems with it. Would I have preferred if one artist had done the whole thing? Well, yes, of course. But it is big. It is bombastic. The colors are great. And I really enjoyed it. Dr. Multiverse makes her first appearance. I imagine there'll be a few people that are picking this up on spec, hoping to cash in. I think it's way too early to say whether that'll be worth anything, but overall, I enjoyed the story. It does feel very much like it's following right on the footsteps of Infinite Frontier. And Joshua Williamson, he's winning me over. I don't know exactly what he has planned. I hope when the DC universe comes out the other end, it's a little cleaner than it is right now because, we talk about these continuity issues all the time and they're not that big of a deal, but everything does feel a little bit like a mess right now with, it used to be you had just one Earth, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then it was 52 Earths, and now it's back to being a multiverse, and then we find out it's an omniverse, which is a multiverse of multiverses. It's getting out of hand a little bit. I wouldn't mind if they dialed it back. I mean, I understand editorial why they do it, because then you can say every story matters, it all counts. But as we've said before, if everything counts, then nothing counts. Nothing has impact. Like, what are you supposed to pay attention to? Anything can matter. Nothing matters in a way. There's such a thing as too much of a good thing, I guess we'll say. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I actually thought the Brandon Peterson art was the best of the three. But the color work is solid throughout and very primary, which gives it that very classic superhero feel. So I do feel like the colors by Hi-Fi were a highlight of pulling it all together and making the art seem, even though when you look closer at it, you can clearly tell it's not the same sort of style or line work, but the consistency of the colors makes it work. I actually enjoyed this. There was never a time where I was reading Infinite Frontier where I was excited and looking forward to the next issue. It was just always like, okay. Spent the first 3 issues wondering how are all these different disparate plot threads going to come together. And then when they finally did, it was a bit underwhelming. I didn't feel that way with Justice League Incarnate. Like I understand, I feel like I understand the direction that this is heading now. We've got an interesting new character. We've got plenty of the Thomas Wayne Batman and the Calvin Ellis Superman for fans of those characters. And I don't know, it's working well. I think the pacing in this is much better than Infinite Frontier. Any of those issues were. So overall, I was a pretty big fan. I really enjoyed this. What'd you think, Rocky?
I agree. Full props to Joshua Williamson. I've given that guy a hard time on Flash for all those years, and but I got to tell you, man, he's done a good job with Infinite Frontier. At least he's made me happy. Justice League Incarnate here. He's done a good job of actually simplifying what is going to lead into the next DC Crisis event. And of course, the ongoing criticism of DC Crisis events is that, they're too damn confusing. It's hard to understand. And oh my God, another DC Crisis. When is this all going to end? Well, this issue starts off. I mean, what I love about this issue starts off on Earth 8. And for those who don't know, Earth 8 is the Marvel Universe, is what the DC Universe considers the Marvel Universe. And instead of the Avengers on Earth 8, you have the Retaliators. And instead of Avengers Tower, you got Retaliators Tower. You got the big R on top of the Retaliators Tower, right on the top panel of that opening page. And of course, you got, instead of the Avengers with Captain America and Iron Man and Thor, you got Red Dragon, American Crusader, Deadeye, Wonder Jin, Big Baby instead of Hulk, Silver Eagle, Machine Head. These are the characters that Grant Morrison had a lot of fun with in in Multiversity. And what's interesting about the Retaliators is that it's on Earth 8, and ironically enough, the Retaliators hate the multiverse. Machine Head, along with the Retaliators, they all voted, and they basically sided with the Psycho Pirate. They wanted to work. They sent Machine Head to work with Psycho Pirate because they hate the multiverse, because there's always a multiversal event. They're always being attacked. So the Retaliators of Earth 8 do not. They want to shield themselves from the rest of the multiverse. Ironically enough, this Dr. Multiverse, this character, she is from Earth 8. And she discovers Machine Head's head, and she's there. And Dr. Multiverse, she can look at somebody and see the different versions of themselves. So if she looks at Superman, she looks at Calvin Ellis at one point, and she sees all the multiple versions of Superman. She can look at Flashpoint Batman and see all the multiple versions of Batman throughout the multiverse. And Dr. Multiverse has something in common with Darkseid. There's only one of her. There's only one iteration of Dr. Multiverse. She has no iteration in other universes. Just like Darkseid unified all the universal, multiversal aspects of himself into one being, there's only one Darkseid, there's only one Dr. Multiverse. But Darkseid's very powerful. We don't know exactly the extent of Dr. Multiverse's power, but we know that she's going to play an important role. There's a Thanos character here called Tartarus who ends up invading Earth 8 because he's looking for one of the things he's looking for is the crack in the multiverse. Because Darkseid's looking for the crack in the multiverse, because what happened in Infinite Frontier is Darkseid utilized Barry Allen, the Flash, to crack open a hole in the multiverse, and the idea is to pull into the multiverse what is behind the crack, and that behind the crack is the Great Darkness. And if you think of classic DC lore, the Great Darkness saga, the Great Darkness is the void. It's what's behind the multiverse, and they want to. It's the focal point of all evil, and the Great Darkness lies dormant on the other side of the crack. And Darkseid wants to bring that in, but Darkseid, before he does that, Darkseid needs to take out Tartarus. So for those ever wondering who would win in a battle between Thanos and Darkseid, this is as close as you're going to get, because we're never going to see a Marvel and DC team up. So you're going to have to enjoy it through the analog of the Tartarus character here. And surprise, surprise, Darkseid snaps his neck. But meanwhile, Avery Ho, who is Barry Allen's sort of protege, another Flash character created by Joshua Williamson, she's recruited by Calvin Ellis and the Flashpoint Batman, who approach her, and she works in conjunction with Dr. Multiverse as they try to locate the crack of the universe, of the multiverse, and they need to locate the crack and utilize the powers of Dr. Multiverse and Avery Ho, this new Flash, whose energy is, she's from Earth Zero, so she's got a special vibe frequency that she can vibrate at that can seal the rift and the hole along in conjunction with the powers of the Dr. Multiverse. So, but so much happens in this issue. It's awesome. They get to Earth 8 and they're attacked. They got to fight the battle of Tartarus. Tartarus is battling Darkseid. And then they got this grandfather box that's flying around distracting them. And the retaliators are pretty much, most of them, I don't know if they're killed or they're injured. And it ends with Darkseid victorious, but they managed to move the crack. So Dr. Multiverse and Avery Ho managed to keep the crack out of Darkseid's hands, but Darkseid will use the grandfather box to locate it. And so this crack in the multiverse is going to reappear in different parts of the multiverse. And so what I suspect we're going to get these characters throughout the next few issues traveling in different parts of the multiverse as trying to prevent Darkseid from getting control of taking advantage of this crack and into the seeping great darkness that will permeate the multiverse. I'm loving this. This is fun. The characterization is great. I love the dialogue. I love the art here is fantastic, even though there's different artists on here. Andre Brizin, Brandon Peterson, and Tom Derenick. I think their art sort of bleeds together quite well here. I love the battle between Tartarus and Darkseid. This is just a fun battle. Joshua Williamson, has a lot of fun. You can tell he's having fun scripting this. I'm enjoying this. This is just fun, man. Tell me what you thought about it, Jace.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's a lot of fun. It's compelling. Anxiously awaiting the next issue. So. All right, let's move on to Wonder Girl number 5, Homecoming Part 5. Joelle Jones as the writer, Adriana Melo on art, Jordi Belair does the colors, Pat Brosso on letters. As we mentioned, first issue of Adriana Melo as the artist here, and yeah, I feel like she's trying to imitate Joelle Jones' style rather than just using her own style. Really thick lines here, and it as we've said so many times, thick lines don't lend to a lot of movement. So I didn't feel like it was the best art. That being said, I did enjoy this issue of Wonder Girl more than I've enjoyed any issue because I felt like we finally got some Yara Flora characterization. She gets sort of tired of being taken advantage of in a way and sort of defies the gods and goddesses, if you will, and wants to break out, go back home, be left alone to do what she wants to do. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Cassie Sandsmark, Wonder Girl, is meeting up with another member of a tribe called Esquecida, which apparently is the third Amazonian tribe. And this is all going to lead into the trial of the Amazons because apparently no issue of DC Comics that comes out today can do anything but lead into to something else. So is this too little too late? You know, you were talking about too little too late for Justice League Dark. I kind of feel like maybe it is. I sort of feel like I don't hear anybody talking about the Wonder Girl title at all. They had a lot of delays, probably because Joelle Jones was writing and drawing it. That's probably why we got Adriana Melo to do this issue. So be curious to see if Joelle Jones comes back to draw anymore or if she's just going to be writing it. And does anybody even care anymore about Yara Flor? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. What did you think, Rocky?
Well, I think Adriana Melo, she should probably stick to her own style of art. It's pretty good. She does actually a decent enough job imitating Joelle Jones, but doesn't quite nail it, but does a fairly competent job. I don't understand. Jordi Belair, did she run out of time? I don't understand why these great fight sequences, we're just getting a bunch of different shades of orange. It's as opposed to why not just show off and have beautiful colors showing Yara Flor fighting. And I'm a little disappointed in that. I saw the same thing in issue, I think Wonder Girl issue 4. There was like the color green. There was a 2-page spread showing the origin of the third tribe of the Amazons. And it was all in a shade of green. I thought that was sort of a missed opportunity for Jordi Belair to show off her colors. But in any event, I'm uh I have issues with the manner in which the story is told. It's if I was to tell this story to somebody who wants to know the origin of Yara Flor, I would make it sound better than the way it comes across and the way it's executed on the page here. And I say that with great respect. It's Joelle Jones is getting the message across. I mean, basically, Yara Flor. I mean, I got to say, Yara Flor knew well in advance that she was going to go to Mount Olympus and be trained by be trained and to basically be one of Hera's, I guess, glorified bodyguards. She was told that by Herms pardon me, by Earl. She was told that. So for her to feign surprise and decide that she's not going to drink the ambrosia liquid because Hera is a bitch or a queen bitch. I mean, come on. Like, she already knew that. So Yara suddenly showing some of her own independence and being and refusing to drink from it and grabbing a sword, it just seems really forced. Like, it lacked verisimilitude for me. She knew exactly what was going to happen well in advance, and for her to pretend now that she's surprised is nonsense. So that never worked for me. I also, Cassie Sandsmark talking with Paturi is a member of the Brazilian tribe of Amazons, with Cassie Sandsmark talking with Paturi and not being aware that there's a third tribe of Amazons, seeming she was shocked to hear there's a third tribe of Amazons. I don't understand how stupid Cassie is. Who did Cassie think she was talking to? Seriously, I mean, it was obvious. I thought when Cassie and Artemis were given their missions, when Cassie was given her mission by Queen Nubia, and when Artemis was given the mission by Queen Faruka II to go and to confront Yara Flor, I thought, weren't they told and filled in on that? That this was a third tribe of Amazons, that Yara Flor's importance. By the way, Jace, why is Yara Flor important? We
I
still
have no
don't
idea.
know. We have no idea. We still don't know why are we supposed to care about Yara Flor? Now, I care about it because she's a cool looking character. I like her attitude. I love the fact that she's got an attitude and she can be very difficult to deal with. That's kind of fun. I don't mind that. I don't mind that in her character. It's a nice change from Diana Wonder Woman. But again, I just, all these wasted conversations between Cassie and Paturi and Herms and these protracted fight scenes that don't move the narrative forward, I find very frustrating, quite frankly. But again, it is moving ever so slowly. We get the death of Jerry, her flying horse, who she calls Jerry, and Akahim is the name of the city of the Equiseta, where the Equiseta Amazons live. Akahim. So we learn that. Just that it's revealed at the end that the Brazilian tribe that of Amazons, the Equiseta, they apparently want to attack the Mascara because they got their reasons. They're preparing to attack the Mascara, and Donna Troy is their secret weapon that they want to use. And why is Donna Troy working with the Equiseta? We don't know. There's all kinds of question. Apparently, there's been a neglection of duty that has occurred, and that the Equiseta Amazons are the only ones to scale the balance, the balance right. And we don't even know the origin of Yara here adequately enough. And then we're going into this trial of the Amazons. I just feel that this is. I wish this was a little bit more clear. I really hope it improves in the next few issues before we get into Trial of the Amazons, because I just feel a little that there's too many holes right now in this picture.
Yep, I agree. And you're right. I'm glad you put it that way. The Equiseta are going to attack the Mascara for reasons, because that's all we know. For reasons. They have reasons. We don't know what they are, but they have reasons. So, all right, moving on. Nightwing 2021 Annual Number 1 from writer Tom Taylor. Cian Tormey and Daniel HDR on pencils. Cian Tormey, Ralph Fernandez, and Daniel HDR on inks. Rain Barretto and John Kalis on colors. Wes Abbott on letters. Yes, that's a lot of artists. Frankly, it shows. The art is really inconsistent. At times, it's really, really good. And at other times, it feels like animation style, like Looney Tunes animation style, with almost no detail, especially in the faces, and the backgrounds are almost non-existent. So the art was was inconsistent for me. Didn't work. Uh, Although the colors I thought were pretty solid and consistently done very well throughout. As far as the story itself, I mean, it was pretty fun to see Nightwing and Red Hood team up, both in the past and in the present. So that was a lot of fun. I know some people were bitching at Tom Taylor online about um, Red Hood not using guns anymore, blah blah blah. I'm like, man, that happened a long time ago. You're complaining about the wrong guy. It clearly was an editorial driven decision, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. Um, and there's going to be people that don't like it. And hey, you know what? I'm sorry, but in this day and age, it's probably not that responsible to glorify using guns in a comic. It is what it is. I'm sorry. There's plenty of other comics you can go and read if you that don't come from DC if you want to read about people using guns and shooting people. But I don't feel like books that are from a big publisher like DC, they have a lot of kids that read them, should really be having heroes or protagonists. I don't know if you call Red Hood a hero, but protagonists that's using guns. So I didn't mind it. I thought it was a good change. Now, him choosing to use a crowbar is kind of dark. The fact that he got killed by a crowbar from Joker, and that's why he's deciding to use it is, that could be problematic in its own right. But for the most part, I enjoyed the characterization. I enjoyed the story. Clayface sort of being hired as like this mercenary to impersonate Red Hood. All that story made a lot of sense to me. So yeah, overall, I thought this was a win. Does it rise to the level of those early issues of Nightwing that Tom Taylor and God, who's the artist? I'm totally drawing a blank right now. Does it rise to the level of those? Who's the
Redondo?
Bruno Redondo. Does it rise to the level of Bruno Redondo and Tom Taylor's early Nightwing? No, it's not that good. But again, I guess that just goes to show you the last 3 issues of Nightwing, where it's tied in with Future State, we complained about him not being that good, and maybe not giving as much credit as we've given Bruno Redondo, because his artwork has been amazing and we've been shouting him out every time we've covered one. Maybe even we didn't realize just how important the style of art and the visual narrative and visual storytelling he's doing, how much that brings to the tone of what Tom Taylor's doing, because maybe that's what's missing here. Maybe that's what makes this Nightwing annual good, but not great. So yeah, I thought it was okay. Artwork's a little inconsistent, color work great, and overall, it's a winner for me because I enjoyed the interaction between Nightwing and Red Hood in present day as well as in the past, but mostly in present day. That's when it really was the best for me. Plus, I think the main cover is fantastic. So, what do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I like it. I like the fact that. Good night. Kiss my daughter good night again. Yeah, I like the fact that Dick Grayson trusts Jason Todd. At the end of the day, Jason Todd has had a very speckled past in the Batman family. He's the black sheep of the Batman family. And Dick Grayson even at one point says to him, it was in one of the flashback scenes that, that he says, "I'm sorry that Batman, has made you feel small at times by propping me up, by putting me on a pedestal." Because it might be fair to say that, maybe Dick Grayson is Bruce Wayne's favorite Batman. Or at least, I think Batman has a special place for Dick Grayson in his heart. And Dick Grayson takes it upon himself to apologize to Jason Todd at one point, saying, "I'm sorry if Batman ever made you feel small by propping me up." And then the fact that Jason Todd is the prime suspect in the death of this Mr. Lineker, who was killed by a Red Hood lookalike, Dick Grayson tells him, he meets up with Jason Todd and says, "I believe you." And he says, "Just like that?" And Nightwing says, "Just like that." And why? Because you don't up to it. Now take your top off, he said, and let's get to work. And that's what they do. And these are guys that are brothers. They've had their brotherhood. I mean, it's called Blood Brothers, this storyline, and they fought alongside Batman. They've been trained by the best of the best, and they've also know what it's like to be in a semi-dysfunctional family, and perhaps a very dysfunctional family, depending on your view of the Bat family. And so these guys work well together, and they know each other, and that's why this is an enjoyable story. If you're a Nightwing fan, you'll enjoy this, and if you're a Red Hood fan, you'll enjoy this too. it's very common. This week we're getting 8 different Batman titles or Batman related titles, and so this might get drowned out. But this was a good story. This was a good Nightwing annual. My criticism of it has nothing to do with the story. I personally wish that this annual would have had a story more related to what Tom Taylor is doing in his storyline in the mainstream Nightwing title, because this is more of a distraction, and it's a nice enough story. But it's one that if you're enjoying Tom Taylor's Nightwing, you really don't need to get this to enjoy what Tom Taylor is doing with respect to the current storyline in Nightwing. But all in all, it's pretty good, and the multiple artists on this annual, I think, work together quite well.
Yep, I agree. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about Robin 2021 Annual #1 next. Joshua Williamson's writer, Roger Cruz on pencils, Victor Olazaba on inks, Luis Guerrero on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. I won't go so far as to say this was the best issue of Robin. Last time we sort of learned about what Damian's grandmother's plans were for the demon head and whatnot, and this actually takes place before that. And there's even an editor's note that says it takes place after issue 6, and I just sort of wish we'd gotten this sooner, because it's really, really good.
Yes.
And we get a bunch of background into various characters that are taking part in the Lazarus tournament, especially Flatline. And it makes me care about these characters more, or at least, like we were talking about with Teen Titans Academy, at least when they show up on the screen, or on the page, I have, context for them. Even Ravager, who's somebody we already know, at least I'm given context as to what she's doing in the story. So, again, maybe it was a paper delay issue. Maybe it was pushed back for other reasons. We don't know. But having this come out sooner would have added more context to the Robin story, and I think would have been beneficial. And then, of course, we do have a little epilogue with Ra's al Ghul looking younger than he has in quite a while, actually, that says, follow Talia's adventures in the pages of Batman, Robin, and Deathstroke Incorporated, and don't miss Shadow War coming in 2022. So some other we got Shadows of the Bat, and now we're told in several books this week that there's a Shadow War coming as well. Must have something to do maybe with the League of Lazarus and League of Assassins fighting amongst themselves. I'm not really sure. So yeah, I thought this was really, really solid. Again, it would have been better to have it sooner to tie in with the narrative. And also the Roger Cruz pencils, I thought it's not quite as loose or dynamic as Gleb Melnikoff's artwork, but it's a similar enough style that I think if you threw this annual in a collected edition with the regular issues of Robin, that it would work. So what'd you think, Rocky?
Yeah, well, basically, speculator alert, this is the origin of Flatline. That's what makes this stand out. It's a lot of fun. First of all, the cover is fantastic. The cover is bright pink. I mean, I can't believe I'm liking a bright pink cover, but I mean, let's just a bright pink cover that almost looks like a teen magazine. So it captures the fun that we've had with the Robin mainstream title so far, and this basically gives us a protracted origin of Flatline, which with meeting up with Lord Deathman, her grandfather being a former KGB agent who is experimented upon and acquires the ability to get the abilities of people who die. And ultimately, she inherits those powers from her grandfather, terrifies her family. Flatline's own family sort of abandoned her, and she ends up being tutored by Lord Deathman, who basically trades Flatline off in order to get some Lazarus blood to maintain his own health and integrity. And then Flatline ended up in the Lazarus tournament. That's her origin, and it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I agree with you. They should have been told before. This could have come out like probably 2 or even 2 months ago, or at least a month ago. Would have probably had a little bit more attention as opposed to being drowned out in the middle of this annuals week. But in any event, it's not just Flatline. We got the origins. We found out some additional information, not a heck of a lot more. We found out some more information about about Black Swan, XXL, Drenched, Ravager, and Hawk. And but we still don't get what's interesting here is what is a character we don't get information on, and that's Respawn, which is kind of funny. So we get at one point Damien is looking through a database on all the characters that he's fighting, and he reads up on quite a bit. He reads up on a lot of them. And interestingly enough, one of them is even Richard Dragon Jr. I didn't know Richard Dragon had a son, so that's interesting. There's a lot of very interesting things behind the scenes here that I'm curious to see how they're going to play out. But in any event, we got Black Swan, XXL, they're Drenched, but nothing about Respawn. And Respawn is sort of a ripoff of Deadpool and Spawn, and yet I don't know. I guess Joshua Williamson thinks that we care about Respawn. God damn, I'm kind of curious as to who Respawn is. I'm actually more curious about who Respawn is than I am Red X. I tell you that much, which is kind of crazy. But in any event, I had a lot of fun here. People who have been enjoying the Robin series, I really think they're going to want to pick this up because this is a lot of fun too, and it's a nice supplement, particularly with Robin #6, as the editors note makes clear. And also, not that people are really loving Bendis's checkmate, but Talia al Ghul is now is now once again the leader of Leviathan, coming out of checkmate. She confronts her father Ra's al Ghul at the end of this, and that will be leading into Shadow War, as you already mentioned.
Yeah, and that's we get that same note in the villain special we'll talk about in a second too. But anyway, on to another really, really big highlight this week. It's second issue of Tom King and Greg Smallwood's Human Target. Tom King's the writer, Greg Smallwood's the artist, Clayton Cowell on letters. Smallwood handles the colors himself. Man, is this title just, it's so fantastic. It's timeless. We talked last time in the first issue about the pop art feel of Greg Smallwood's art. It's Black Label, but it doesn't matter because it easily could fit into continuity. Although I suppose if Human Target dies and somebody else wants to use them, that wouldn't necessarily work. But since when has death ever stopped anybody? We get just some wonderful interaction, some wonderful character work, both visually and narratively, between Human Target Christopher Chance and Ice here, where her origin, and I don't know, correct me if you know, Rocky, we get a new origin for her that's a little bit darker than anything we've seen before, and it came as news to me. I don't know if that's actually something that happened. We're told her first origin about her being this princess, and I thought that was still her official origin, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, that changed a little bit in the '90s. Yeah, so I mean, Tom King gets the gist of it right. I mean, honestly, I would have to go back and look, but he gets the gist of it right. I think I'll let you finish, but I think he did he just such a great job here. I mean, I just love this. This is just a great comic book. I love the art.
The art's fantastic, and there's so many little things, like when Christopher Chance and Ice finally kiss, and then there's a little curl of like smoke that comes out of his mouth, like frost, because she's cold, and he can see his breath, even though they're out swimming in the ocean, because it's a warm day, because he kissed her. Little things like that, little things like the title, chapter number 2, We Cry, which is actually the label of the bottle of Jack Daniels that Christopher Chance is too cool for school in this Mad Men-esque sort of way, but I'm sorry, Christopher Chance wouldn't be drinking Jack Daniels because that stuff's just gross. I would hope that he would drink a better quality of whiskey or bourbon than that, but it's a small nitpick for sure, because overall this characterization, the mystery, everything we get is fantastic. I mean, do you or do you not get like this really cool 60s Bewitched vibe from the cover?
Absolutely.
And it all starts from there, and that the charm of that carries all the way through the issue. And then right at the very end, Tom throws us for a little loop with just one sentence. And I'd get a chance to see up close the woman who might have killed me. So throughout this charm and building of the relationship between Christopher Chance, Human Target, and Ice, and then come to find out, Christopher Chance may have been one step ahead of her all the time, and maybe it's actually Ice who poisoned Christopher Chance in her attempt to poison Lex Luthor. And to
Yes.
me, I mean, I know we're only on issue 2, but to me that seems like a very Tom King thing to do. That'll be my prediction there, right? Like they're totally going to fall in love, and Ice is going to end up being the cause of death for this guy who should have been the one, like, and she'll just be racked with guilt and whatnot if Christopher Chance does indeed die. But it just seems like, you know, she was trying to give Lex Luthor his comeuppance, what he deserved for the, what he had done to her in the past, and the pain that she'd caused. He killed her basically. Lex Luthor was indirectly responsible for the death of Ice, so why wouldn't she,
Yeah.
Get her vengeance? And then come to find out, she kills this other guy who could have been somebody she could have brought happiness back to her life. It's sublime. It's beautiful. The little quirks in it that really bring it home in the Greg Smallwood art. I can't say enough good things about this book. And if it came out on any different week, it would certainly be my book of the week. But it gets beat out ever so slightly. But what do you think, Rocky?
I love this. I think I missed reviewing the first issue with you, but
Yeah,
yeah, I absolutely loved the first issue. I thought it was great. And this continues. It matches the tone of that, but even in a more heightened sense, you nailed it with the Bewitched analogy. I mean, boy oh boy, it's just great. I love the scene where Ice and Christopher Chance are walking on the beach, and he talks about skipping rocks over the ocean when he was a 12-year-old boy, and she crushes and she creates a small little sliver of ice for him, and almost looks like a small round piece of ice glass, and he skips it across the ocean, and he draws the analogy that when he was younger, he didn't have great parents, and he felt when he was younger and skipping rocks in the ocean that he could have died when he was younger, no one would notice. And he alludes to the fact that even now as an older person, he no one may notice when he dies even now. So there's an element of tragedy to Christopher Chance, and there's you can't help but love Christopher Chance and feel for him, because here he is, he's got 11 days left to live, and he's with a beautiful woman, and he's taken away by her beauty. I mean, there's a scene where she comes out and she's wearing the bikini, and he's like, and he says Jesus to himself. I mean, because she's just beautiful. And of course, Greg Smallwood, you couldn't get a better artist to render it. Just fantastic. And Ice, there's some compassion with Ice, and I really hope she doesn't end up being the murderer here. You never know with Tom King, right? But uh, I hope that she's not, but there's an innocence with Ice, and there was always that perception that Ice was always the softer side, and Fire, her friend Fire, who was probably the far more obvious candidate for the potential murderer of Lex Luthor, or attempted murder of Lex Luthor. But this really plays off well here, and it makes reading this issue makes me realize how much we need a human target comic book in the DC universe. I want more of this. I want more of this I want this guy investigating all kinds of things in the DC universe. This is interesting. I love this interaction with Ice. If this can be pulled off with Ice, imagine all these other characters that we just think we know, we don't know a lot of, that we can get. I really like this. I wish this Human Target. I know it's just this. I think it's, I don't know if this is a 4 or 5 issue series or whatever, or 12 issues, right?
yep.
12 issues. That, of course, yeah, 12 days left to live, 12 issues. But I'm loving this, and this is it's between this and another comic, my favorite of the week by far. And I'm just gonna say again to DC, man, all that Batman, and easily this easily defeats all the Batman titles for me this week. There's another title that I like that I'll put with a tie with Human Target, but we'll get to it. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. I agree with your assessment.
Yeah, I agree. Way better than any of the Batman titles. And that's not to say any of the Batman titles were bad. This is just better. This is
Yeah,
something new and fresh. So,
yeah.
but speaking of which, we can't be off Batman for long. So now let's talk about The Joker 2021 Annual #1. Matthew Rosenberg and James Tynion are the writers. Francesco Francovilla does the art and the colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. El Mal Duerme Bien. And I don't even know what that means. Something about
Yeah.
death, I think. A good death, maybe.
I didn't Google it. I was going to Google it, but I ran out
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah, so basically, much like the previous Francesco Francovilla title that we had with Joker, this one is a flashback, and it's all about early on Joker, Gordon sort of fallout. Gordon's cleaning up the precinct. He's been working with Batman for quite a while. Gordon's been in town for long enough to get a lot of the costume criminals off the streets, and a lot of the everyday crime, muggings or whatever, they're all down to a point where Gordon feels comfortable starting to get rid of some of the corrupt cops on the Gotham City payroll, and that sort of backfires. And the Joker shows him the way that's going to backfire in a very interesting way with a piñata, to sort of follow up on that Spanish title, I guess you'd say. So this felt very in line with what Francesco and Tynion had done previously on the Joker, but I even said when they did that one that it felt out of place with the story that we'd gotten. So it's not that, I mean, this still feels like a Jim Gordon story. Don't get me wrong. It's not going so far as to bring the Joker title back to, um, you know, series that stars the Joker. This is still very much a Jim Gordon story, but I just don't enjoy these as much as the narrative in the present day with Gordon chasing after the Joker and trying to figure out what's going on with all the conspiracies and different machinations behind the scenes. These are just context stories that they're okay, but they're just okay. And again, the Francovilla art sort of suits it because it's crime noir in a way, but I vastly prefer Francovilla on things like Night of the Ghoul that he's doing at Best Jacket with Scott Snyder for Comixology Original. It's a horror title. It just suits his style much better in my mind. So I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, I'm going to say something that I'm probably going to sound a little bit hypocritical here because I've been defending Tynion, and I think this is the first time Rosenberg teamed up with him on the Joker, but we've been talking before how, the criticism of this entire series leading into this annual is that, it's not a Joker story, that it's Jim Gordon. And I think an argument could have been made in every single issue that Joker was prevalent in and behind the motivations of every character in every story. And however, this annual, I had a really hard time accepting that this was a Joker comic for some reason. I can kind of see it because it was like, even I'm starting to think, oh, come on, Tynion. This was 42 pages, only 4 pages. I counted them. 4 pages have the Joker drawn on them in 42 pages. Now, again, this is about police corruption. This is a Jim Gordon story through and through. The highlights of this story had nothing to do with the Joker. Now, these were good highlights. The highlights for me of this issue was when it's obvious and it's so subtle that Jim Gordon knows that his daughter is Batgirl. He's watching Batgirl. He's watching Batgirl fight Catman alongside Batman on top of the hill, and Batgirl falls and he panics and he tells the cops to go help her out. And it's obvious because, he doesn't come out and acknowledge it openly, but it's obvious that he knows she's Batgirl. He has private moments with Barbara, his daughter, where she's got a black eye and she's injured, and he won't tell her he knows she's Batgirl, but it's obvious that he cares. But they have a disagreement. He knows that they fundamentally disagree on how to confront crime. He knows his own daughter is a vigilante, and he's the commissioner, for God's sakes. And he doesn't confront her on it, but he's there for support. And yet at the same time, he's a shitty father in many ways. He's a shitty father to his son, kind of, he's not a good husband. And that really comes through here. And again, this is an amazing Jim Gordon story. It is. It's very well, I think it's well done. But I will say that more so than the others, this was not a Joker story. The Joker just at the end, this was basically Jim Gordon flushing out corruption, firing 5 Gotham City police officers for corruption, and they all, in a fit of revenge, go and work for the Joker and try to take out Gordon. Gordon defeats them, and the Joker ultimately ends up at the end killing the informant that told Gordon who the corrupt officers were. That's essentially the story. But the heart of the story for me was watching Gordon interact with Barbara, and just again that commentary about his life and about his how, his, I guess, his lack of his lack of greatness as a father and as a parent. But in any event, I people who have had issues with the Joker are going to continue to have the same issues with this, because this is a Jim Gordon story. But guys like you and I who appreciate the character of Jim Gordon maybe more so than others, we're going to be far more forgiving.
Well, I looked up the title. Evil Never Sleeps. Wait.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Evil Sleeps Well. That's what the
All right.
title is. Evil Sleeps Well. So, very appropriate for the story, with the corruption, and when Gordon fires all these people, they go to work for the Joker. So, the Joker's just biding his time, evil is sleeping well, in the
Yeah.
story, because it makes a lot of sense where, yeah, crime's down because they wanted to lull Gordon into a false sense of security and have him do exactly uh, what he ended up doing. So yeah, it's a solid story. But you're right. People that are fans of the Joker probably are getting pissed off. Like, come on, when are we gonna get a Joker story already? This is a Gordon story for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, up next, we're not going to cover these stories individually because there's just too many of them. But I'll read off uh, all the creative teams, and then maybe if myself or Rocky wants to mention one or two. So this is the Gotham City Villains Anniversary Giant. Again, it's 100 pages. We get a Penguin story called Birdcat Love from Danny DeVito. Yes, the actor, Danny DeVito. He's the writer. Dan Mora is the artist. Tamara Bonvillain is the colorist. Troy Pateri does the letters. There's a Scarecrow story called The Fearless Man by Wes Craig. He does the story and the art. Jason Wordie does the colors. And World Design does the letters. A Poison Ivy story called, let me see if I can get this right. It's a scientific name of a mushroom, a fungus. Ophiocordyceps lamia, I think is how you pronounce it. It's by G. Willow Wilson, the writer. Emma Rios is the artist. Jody Blair does colors. Hassan Otsman Elhau on letters. Ra's al Ghul does a Demon's Game story written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. Ricardo Federici is the artist. Sonny Go does the colors. Saida Temofonte on letters. Then we've got a Talia al Ghul story called The Second Eye, written by Nadia Shamus and Joshua Williamson. Max Rayner is the artist, John Kalis on colors, and Troy Petrie on letters. A Red Hood story, and not Jason Todd Red Hood, but the old school Red Hood, as in the Red Hood gang, For the Sky is Red, written by Stephanie Phillips. Great art by Max Fuamara, and he handles the colors. Hassan Otsman Elhau on letters. Mad Hatter story called The Perfect Fit, written by Dan Waters. Skylar Patridge is the artist. Marisa Louise on colors. Rob Lee on letters. And we finish it off with a Killer Moth story, the biggest of all Batman rogues, Killer Moth, The Happiest Man in Gotham, by Marguerite Scott. Ariella Christiana is the artist. Trish Mulvihill does the colors. Ariana Mera on letters. And there's a bunch of pinups as two that are really well done. There's a cover by Lee Bermejo, a Penguin by Frank Quietly, but a ton of them. There's a ton of covers. So if you're a fan of the rogues of Batman, this is the book for you. Thank God there's not a Joker story among here, and there's no repeats. So at least we're getting a few other stories in here to give some spotlight to some other characters. The Danny DeVito story I thought was fine, although it didn't really make much sense to me. It felt like he was writing Catwoman is as much a part of that story as Penguin is. They're together, I guess playing off the whole Batman Returns movie that Danny DeVito was in, but it certainly didn't feel like either of them were villains, very much heroes in the story.
Yeah.
The Poison Ivy story, again, very important because it says it gives some context to where Poison Ivy's at in her head right now, maybe after she's got her two halves reunited at the end of the Fear State. But it says Poison Ivy's story blooms in 2022, and that made me be the most important thing we get out of the Poison Ivy story. That we're going to get a lot more Poison Ivy coming in the next year. Like I said, that Red Hood story, the Max Fuamara art's absolutely fantastic. But for me, the one that stood out more than any of them, I like the Talia al Ghul story. And again, much like the Poison Ivy story, we're told that we have more of Talia al Ghul to come in the pages of Batman, Robin, and Deathstroke, and Shadow War coming in 2022. So I feel like we're getting a different Talia. Like she used to be very shrewish in her characterization. Like I used to not like her. She wasn't very likable. And I feel like over the last 5 or 6 years, she's become a more likable character. maybe as they've tried to turn her into a little bit of an anti-hero or make her more relatable. I feel like that's one of the things that DC has succeeded on. And then I got to mention the Ra's al Ghul story as well. Much like I was saying, the great Riccardo Federici art in the Fear State Omega, we get great Riccardo Federici art in this too, with Phillip Kennedy Johnson and Batman and Ra's al Ghul discussing philosophy of battle over a chess game. I mean, it doesn't get more Batman Ra's al Ghul than that. So again, if you're a fan of Batman villains, you probably want to pick this up. But I have a hard time telling anybody to spend $10 on a comic that's just a bunch of stories that some you're probably going to like and some you're probably going to think are just meh. So I don't know, maybe pick it up and flip through it and decide which ones you might want to pick up. Any of the stories you want to shout out, Rocky?
Well, for me, I mean, I'm a fan of Talia al Ghul, and she's the one that I find the most interesting. Her and Roz. I think Talia al Ghul, especially right now in the DC universe, Talia al Ghul has the most prominence and agency that she's had in a very long time, both by being at the forefront now with Leviathan, and she also happens also to be a member of the Justice League Totality in the Justice League Totality satellite. So I'm not sure how that continuity is a little wonky. I don't know how she can both advise the Justice League as a member of Justice League Totality and also be a member of Leviathan, a criminal organization on Earth Zero. So there's something wonky there. But aside from that, I mean, she's thank God she replaced Mark Shaw. I mean, good God, who the hell wants Mark Shaw as the leader of Leviathan, right? So, yeah, I really love the art. She looks sexy as hell in this. I'm not sure who the artist was who drew the Talia al Ghul, but I really like. I guess. Oh, here it is. I guess John Callis on the art. Yeah.
He did the colors.
Oh, sorry. It's so Max Raynor.
Yeah, Max Raynor. That's right.
Okay. Yeah. Very well done. Very well done. Yeah. That's the best for me. I'm not a fan of these Gotham City villains. I don't like these compilations. This is probably one of the better ones. Probably in terms of maybe the bang for your buck. But I want to be diplomatic with my words because this is a gorgeous cover. You got choice of multiple covers here. I suspect that even though we're giving this thing short thrift in our review, it's only because we got so many to review and we never had a time to get into the weeds on all the stories. And I apologize to those listening for that. I suspect that a lot of these stories might have more prominence and more relevance moving forward in the DC universe. Only because they seem to, there's something about these stories. They could be referenced in the future. So a possible speculator alert on this particular issue. So I might be picking this up. I'll just pick my favorite cover because I have a feeling that you never know with some of these, like the Danny DeVito story is off the beaten path, but I don't know. You've mentioned this before, Chase, about the inconsistencies with DC. We'll get some of these compilations of stories and we'll get a crazy out there story from an actor who played the Penguin alongside a story like the Talia Ra's al Ghul story or Poison Ivy story that might have a lot more impact in the mainstream DC universe proper. So there's an inconsistency there. I wish editorial would work out those kinks, but I guess they're trying to overlap those two worlds in a vain attempt to get those two worlds to meet. But in any event, I don't. This wasn't my favorite, but I like Talia Ghul. That's my favorite story, and I'm not gonna say anything about any of the other stories.
Yeah, again, I totally agree with Rocky. If there wasn't 16 other books this week, we would go story by story. But now we're adding in 8 more, and we just don't have the time. So, yeah, again, flip through it. Maybe it's your particular cup of tea. Maybe it's not. I'm going back and forth. I didn't order it, but I thought, well, I always buy Lee Bermejo covers. Maybe I'll buy it. Then I saw it was $10. I was like, do I really want? Now I don't know. It's going to be one of those things. I'll pick it up when I get to the shop and just hold it in my hands and does it speak to me? And that'll determine whether or not I get it or not. All right, we're going to skip over and go to the last book because I have a feeling the one next to last is probably one we're going to want to talk about a little more. So we'll talk about Wonder Woman 2021 Annual Number 1 from writers Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan. Andy McDonald does the art, Nick Filardi on colors, Pat Brosso on letters. This was a really weird book for me. We get some great characterization and wonderful context for the friendship of Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, and Etta Candy, which I thought was great. But we're introduced to this new character called Altum, who seems very strange. He's got this real pale complexion, clearly out of place. What doesn't make sense to me is the fact that Etta Candy's military and her spidey sense doesn't go off. And even when Altum tells her things, tells her straight out. She goes, "Oh, no. He says, I'm the last survivor." This is somebody who knows Wonder Woman, you know? And she goes, "No. You mean you're an introvert." No. He means exactly what he said. He's the last survivor. Why don't you want to find out what he's the last survivor of?
Pay attention.
That's not what you mean, you weird looking albino, pink eyed. And I'm not saying like albino pink eye. I'm talking like pink whirlpools of energy behind sunglasses guy. Like what? She comes across as so dumb in the story. Like it makes no sense. It in a world with Wonder Woman and all these crazy aliens and supervillains or whatever, some strange guy shows up, and her danger sense doesn't go. And she even says later to Wonder Woman, she's like, "Yeah, he was kind of creepy." Well, then what? If you knew there was something off about him, why were you saying, "No, you're not the sole survivor. You mean you're an introvert?" No, he means he's the last survivor. What is he the last survivor of? He's the last survivor of the people that used to live on Paradise Island or right under Paradise Island, under the water right offshore of Paradise Island, before it became Paradise Island, before it became Themyscira. And apparently the gods, when they created Themyscira, or recreated it, I guess you'd say, so the Amazons could have it, they just kicked these people out, kicked this race out, or whatever the hell they are, and just
The
stole it
Enki
from.
people. They're the Enki people.
Yeah.
Enki. Yeah.
So that's a pretty crappy thing to do, but not at all out of the realm of what we know the gods of the DC universe to do. But here's where the other part of the story where it falls apart for me. When he comes and confronts Wonder Woman about this, yeah, maybe he doesn't do it necessarily in the right way. He comes because he's weird and he doesn't, English is not his first language or whatever, but I expect some compassion from Wonder Woman. And instead she goes from, first of all, she's like, "Well, I don't believe you."
Yeah.
That seems very disingenuous, not the way Wonder Woman would act. It just seemed to me that she would ask questions instead of automatically assuming that this guy's not telling the truth. Doesn't ever like, "Hey, hold my lasso and tell me like, this is not a wonder." She starts fighting the guy. This is not Wonder. Who is this? I don't know who this is. The characterization for Wonder Woman in this issue, for me, just didn't work. She was so quick to want to fight this guy. I didn't understand. Did she get up on the wrong side of the bed? I don't know. I don't know. But much like a lot of the other stories that we're talking about here, to be continued in Trial of the Amazons. Maybe that's part of what the Amazons or the Themyscirians have to do. Maybe that's why the Escuda are mad at them. They stole their island. Maybe they have to go on trial. They don't deserve to have their island. I don't know. It seems like something big is being built up, and maybe with context, the story will matter a little bit more. But I don't know. I just felt more than anything like the characterization of Wonder Woman here, like the way she reacts to this guy, and maybe it's something to do with the guy. Maybe he's putting out something that gets people to, act more militant or more confrontational. But it just seemed like with what he was telling her, like if you come up to Wonder Woman and say, "Hey," and even says, "I know it's not necessarily your fault. You didn't do it. The gods did it. But we used to live on that island or right offshore of that island, and they stole it from us." To me, Wonder Woman would be like, "Really? I might have my suspicions you're not telling the truth. Hold this rope. Now tell me again." "Okay, I know you're telling the truth. Let's go talk to the gods. Let's go." She'd want to help. Instead, she wants to fight the guy, saying, "I don't believe you." I don't know. Didn't work for me. I was baffled by the characterization of Wonder Woman in this issue, and it's so strange because Conrad and Cloonan have done a great job. Maybe the pacing of the stories we've had some problems with, um, or haven't felt like they're totally nailing it. But I never felt like they were completely 180 degrees the other way around, with Wonder Woman not acting like Wonder Woman at all. But that's how I felt with this story. This did not feel like the way Wonder Woman would act to me at all. So for me, this was a big miss. Didn't care for it. So, and again, I hate to rant. I'm not saying they did this on purpose.
Oh.
And maybe I just don't have the context. And it'll with context. it'll make the story make sense more. I don't know, but it just felt very, very strange to me the way that she reacted. So
Man,
I don't know. Did you feel differently, Rocky?
no, I did not. You stole my rant, Jace. I mean, I loved. I just wanted to sit back and just. I was sipping my tea as you're ranting, and I'm loving everything I'm hearing. This is awesome. No, I agree with you. I couldn't help but note, but wonder too. It was like Wonder Woman. You got to bug up your chimney. A guy confronts you in a museum, and he has a debate with you, and you're clearly losing the argument, and then he antagonizes you. She pulls the fire alarm to clear everybody out so she can start a fight with him in a museum. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I mean, like, come on. And then look, this, don't get me, obviously, I don't want to mislead people here. This Altum guy, he is a jerk, and he's aggressive in his own right, and he gets in Wonder Woman's space. And so he's not Mr. Nice Guy, and he does take his jacket off, as suggest, and he takes almost like a little bit of a, and they square off a little bit. So, you know, there's some aggression on both sides here, but you know, where's the Wonder Woman who, look, I'm always complaining that Wonder Woman supplicates herself too much to her enemies. Don't get me wrong, I kind of like seeing a little bit of aggression from Wonder Woman. However, you know, again, it amazes me how writers completely screw this up all the time. I want Wonder Woman to be more aggressive. I love the line here where Wonder Woman says, when he says to Wonder Woman, "I've prepared for you," and she says, "Funny, thinking you could prepare for me." I mean, there's some great lines here from Wonder Woman. So I'll give Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad some credit here. There's some good dialogue, some good verbal exchanges, a little bit of banter back and forth, you know, a little, you know, feeling each other out verbally. I get it. That's all well and good. But, you know, the Wonder Woman's a peaceful warrior. So what Wonder Woman would do is, it's one thing to pull a fire alarm, but what Wonder Woman would actually do is would say to him, "Let's go outside and talk." They could have walked outside and talked, and they could have had a fight scene in the sky. And we could have got some epic battle sequences. We could have had a little bit more, you know, we could have had even some greater battle sequences. We didn't have this walk through a museum. It just seemed like a really odd choice to make. And like you said, I think in my view, it sort of took away from some of the character of Wonder Woman, sort of flew in the face here of what we expect from Wonder Woman. And it sort of made her to be, she made some really stupid. I mean, they're fighting in a museum with priceless artifacts. Does this seem like Wonder Woman? All Wonder Woman would have to do is fly off. Now, in having ranted as I have, following your beautiful rant, we should say in defense, or I guess as a counterpoint, Altum did have a bomb planted in the museum, and he blew the museum up. So it might very well have been that Altum would have blew up the museum anyway. So you could argue that maybe Wonder Woman's instinct in pulling the fire alarm was her wisdom of Athena coming through, and she followed her instinct, and pulling the fire alarm got people out of the building. But it just seemed kind of convenient that, how did she, you know, it's not like she knew he was going to blow up the museum. And I got to wonder, would he have blew up the museum if she'd have just walked out and taken the battle to another place? But in any event, we should allude to the factor, this is going to Trial of the Amazons. I want to give Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad some credit here. I kind of like the political machinations and the geopolitical stuff they got set up here. This is Altum is a survivor of the Enkai people who've got a territorial claim to the land upon which the Mascara is located. And he suggests that some of the Amazons of the various three tribes of the Amazons might actually side with the Enki people. And so the trial of the Amazons might not just be a battle between Amazonian ideals amongst the three tribes, but it might also involve a legitimate land claim by the Enki people, which sort of raises the stakes a little bit. And I actually kind of like it. I've always kind of wanted and imagined a Game of Thrones epic story for Wonder Woman. I don't pretend that this is going to be on that grand a scale by any stretch, but I kind of like the seeds that are being planted here, notwithstanding a little bit of off characterization for Wonder Woman in this issue. So I'm done.
Yeah, and as far as the bomb, maybe if she'd put her lasso on, like I said, she would have known about that bomb a lot sooner. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's move on. Wonder Woman Historia, The Amazons, from Kelly Sue DeConnick as the writer, Phil Jiminez as the artist, Hi-Fi, Arif Prianto, and Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. And let me just say, no surprise there's 3 color artists here, because if you pick up this book and flip through it and look at the absolutely amazing line work and detail, it's no wonder that this book took 3 years to come out. This was first announced in 2018 as one of the original Black Label titles at WonderCon, when they announced Black Label as an initiative. And they announced Superman Year One by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. They talked about Batman Damned from Azzarello and Bermejo. They talked about this one, Kelly Sue DeConnick and Phil Jiminez. Phil Jiminez, one of the greatest Wonder Woman artists ever, and wrote it at times as well. And then Kelly Sue DeConnick, her first time getting a chance to write Wonder Woman. Black Label, so it's out of continuity, but they get to be more mature. They're not beholden to continuity, tell the story they want to tell. And again, I know that Kelly Sue's been working very hard on this over the last 3 years, but when you look at the detail of the art, you can understand what took so long, because there is not a single square millimeter of these pages that doesn't have detail from Phil Jiminez. It's absolutely spectacular. This, far and away, without question, my book of the week, maybe my book of the year. I've been anxiously awaiting this, and I have to say, sometimes you wait for something and wait for something and wait for something, like we did with Batman 3 Jokers, and ultimately, whether it's fair or not, when you wait for something that long, I feel like, at least for me, my expectations start to go up, because I've waited so long. And if it just turns out to be just okay, or a pedestrian story, which I felt like 3 Jokers was, I'm disappointed. And it's sort of on me, because my expectations were raised. But I can't help it. In my mind, it's just human nature. The longer you wait for something, the more you anticipate it, the more you sort of, want to see it. You want to hold it in your hands. You want it to be good. And this lives up. This exceeds that. It is so good. And is it the story of the Amazon? Is it the origin of the Amazons that we know? No, it's not. It's something different and darker and more to do with gender politics and more to do with backstabbing and political machinations of the gods, which is a very Greek or Roman thing if you've studied your classics. And so I feel like this is exactly a perfect example of what Black Label is supposed to be. It elevates the material. It's taking this idea of Wonder Woman and the Amazons and their ties to the gods and the whole gender inequality that, in a way, is at the very heart of the character of who Wonder Woman is. And it's pushing it right up front in your face and saying, hey, the origin of the Amazons is very much wrapped up in that. And we're not just going to gloss over that. We're going to lean into that. And we're going to lean into it in a way that's achingly beautiful with this art, but it's also achingly tragic with the way that gender identity exists, both in terms of how it works for this story, but what we bring to it, right? I always talk about how you can really understand a society by looking at the fictions that they create. Look at their make-believe. Look at the stories that they tell. It tells you so much about what's important to those societies and what they're trying to comment on, maybe indirectly by what they focus on in the fictional stories that they create. This is exactly that. This is Kelly Sue DeConnick and Phil Jiminez saying, yes, it's 2021, and guess what? Gender identity, gender inequality is still a thing, and it shouldn't be. Why? Why is it still that way? Let's look back at the very beginnings and let's tell a story that's at the very heart of that. I cannot stress enough how beautiful this art is, and it would be a disservice to what Kelly Sue DeConnick has brought to the story and Phil Jiminez has brought to the story narratively to say that the story doesn't live up to that art, because it totally does. This is the perfect marriage of absolutely stunningly good artwork and really politically, in a way, charged. And I could see this being controversial, and I can see some people hating on it or poo-pooing it, going, God, I'm so sick of gender politics and women complaining about things aren't equal anymore. And obviously it's probably going to, or things aren't equal ever. I shouldn't say anymore. They've never been equal. And I can totally see it being guys, right? Like, I hate to throw you under the bus. I throw myself under the bus along there with you, because I used to be much more are less aware of the inequality that still exists when it comes to gender roles, right? And if I'm tired of hearing about it and you're tired of hearing about it and hearing these women complain, then how the fuck do you think they feel living their entire lives and it still is not fair? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, am I tired of it? Yeah, but I also recognize that doesn't matter because I'm not a woman and I don't have to deal with that persecution and inequality. I'm tired of it for them. And if I'm tired of it, then I can't imagine how sick and tired women must be of it. So I'm sorry if it's in your face, and I'm sorry if you don't like it because it's controversial and it's throwing the inequality of gender right there in your face. But that's the point of it. And to me, that's what is going to make this book transcend just being an incredible story and an incredible comic with great art. And I'm very curious to hear what you have to say, Rocky, because I know you get kind of touchy about the whole gender stuff
Oh,
that
yeah.
Wonder Woman stories throw in your face sometimes. So this is far and away my, like I said, my book of the week. It's just it's wondrous. It's incredible. This is exactly what comics should be. I can't say enough good things about it. I will be singing its praises for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I'll shut up and let you go.
Well, I got to tell you, I will be doing a separate video in reviewing this because there's so much to talk about. This is so rich in terms of its topics and how and what Kelly Sue DeConnick is saying in this story. I listened. She gave an interview to John Citrus on Word Balloon where it was just an amazing interview. It was a really revealing interview where she talks about her work and just how she approached this particular topic and uh, and she basically wants to give gravitas to women to the Amazons, and she doesn't want to make them perfect. In fact, she said where this story departs very significantly from Charles Molston, the creator of Wonder Woman, is that these Amazons aren't perfect. On the contrary, Amazons are not. Amazons, in many ways, are just as flawed as men. But what comes out in this story, and you really see it, is this is Hera. All the goddesses have issues with Zeus because they have issues with men. They don't have issues with mankind per se, but with men in general. At one point, it's the abuses of not men by men that they're concerned about because men abuse arguably everything. It's not just the women that men abuse. And Hera just wants to give more agency to women. And she basically, they want to go to Zeus and say, look, we want to create, you've created mankind. You call it mankind. We want female kind is basically what they're doing. I'm dumbing it down here because you got to read this and look at like you said, the art's fantastic, beautiful. The drawing of the different feminine forms here of all shapes and sizes by Phil Jiminez is absolutely gorgeous. And the agency and the power and the regency and the regalness and the beauty that is given to all these different kinds of women who form the 5 tribes of Amazons it's just absolutely beautiful. And the origins of Hippolyta, who will become queen of the Amazons, as a young woman who essentially is, lives in a village and is essentially a midwife and helps a woman in her birthing her 3rd child. Unfortunately, the 3rd child, it's her 3rd daughter, and the husband wants a son and can't afford a third child unless it's a son, so he sends Hippolyta off to basically drown and kill the child. Hippolyta refuses to do so and ultimately ends up second guessing herself, wanting to save the child. Ultimately, it appears in her attempts to do so, she gets stopped and abused by men and ultimately rescued by these newly created Amazons who are just newly created. And at one point, it says you cannot outpace the world of men, and it's true. You can't. They're everywhere. And at one point, Hippolyta says to Antiope, or if I'm saying that name right, Antiope, she says, "Do you know what I've done?" Because Hippolyta feels like she feels so guilty. Do you know what I've done? And I love what Antiope says. She says, I know what this world has required of you, and I know what that has cost. And I just love the way that was put, and that Antiope was just stating a fact that whatever you did, this is what this world has required of you. And this world happens the way it's controlled by men. You have no agency. You got no freedom. You have no independence. We're going to change that. And you're our inspiration. And of course, ultimately, Hippolyta will become the first queen of the Amazons. At least we can assume that. And I love it. And, I really encourage people to pick this up, because if it's one thing, this is not something where if people are thinking that, oh, you're going to read this and this is a man-bashing book. This isn't a man-bashing book. When I read this, even I was pissed off at Zeus. Zeus's attitude toward Hera when she just wants to create a little bit of female empowerment, create a little bit, a counterpoint to the power of men in man's world. They just want to create something. They want to create their own little pocket of female empowerment there. I don't really see that there's anything wrong with that. And
just looking for a little balance, just looking for some fairness.
That's exactly right.
It's not like they want things to swing all the way over the other way.
Yeah.
They're just looking for a little balance. Give me something. Throw me a bone,
That's exactly right. And so I really never felt, I'm not reading in a bunch of politics into this, because look, can you imagine a more chauvinistic asshole god than Zeus? All the crap that Zeus has done, the chauvinistic, ridiculous things, the philandering that Zeus has done. And of course, look, Hera is no saint by any stretch either. But is it really that much of a stretch that Hera is going to engage in the same type of creation as Zeus is? Zeus creates mankind. Why can you not expect Hera to want to do the same to balance, like you said, balance the scales? To me, this isn't even about politics. This is almost the origins of this, almost come from the arrogance and the ego of the gods. And that's what I like about it. It's not necessarily a political origin that you have to read into, well, it has to be this way. I like the fact that these were female gods that took offense to all these males, all the male gods, like taking pot shots at them, making a joke about it. Well, is it really a surprise that the Amazons came into existence? I almost think the existence of the Amazons is inevitable given what came before. And so in any event, I thought it was really good. I got a lot more to say about it. Maybe we'll collaborate further down the road, but I have a lot more to say about this. I could talk for quite a bit. There's a lot of little subtopics on it, but suffice to say, I'm in this for the long haul. For those people watching, Kelly Sue DeConnick has said this has been approved for 3 volumes, but she actually it's a 9-volume story. So she says, if you like it, please tell DC, tweet about it, talk about it. I personally want her to be able to publish all 9 volumes. DC's only approved the first 3 volumes of this. They're each going to have a different artist, but she's got a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the story will end. That 9th volume is going to end with Steve Trevor washing up on the shores of Themyscira. That's going to be the final scene. We already know that. And the reason for that is that this is the story of Amazons. This is the story of women and the Amazons. And because one of the things that Kelly Sue DeConnick noticed was that the story of Wonder Woman, and it always irritated her, and it's interesting that the story of Wonder Woman started with the story of a man washing up on Paradise Island. Well, this is very deliberately such that this is the story of the Amazons, the history of the Amazons, and it will end with a man washing up on Paradise Island. I think that's very interesting. But I encourage people to go and check out that interview with John Cetris on Word Balloon. I think it's really good. Yeah, guys, get out there and buy Historia. And as I'm talking about it, this is definitely this is my pick of the week. It just ekes out Tom King's Human Target issue 2.
Yeah, for me, it's not close, but it's not because of quality of work. In quality of work, they're very close. Yeah. If I was basing it just on quality of work, I'd be like you. This barely ekes it out. The reason it beats it by a mile is because I've been waiting for this for 3 years. I've been so excited to see this from Kelly Sue and Phil Jiminez. Phil, who's been on the show, I always love talking to at shows, and we're friendly, and he's just fantastic. And Kelly Sue, who I have not had on the show, but hope to have on soon to talk about this. So hopefully we can make that happen for you guys. But that's the reason for me. It's just that extra anticipation. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. So that's why it beats out human target by so much. But yes, in terms of judging it in a vacuum, they're very, very close. So, all right, well, that's all the books that are out this week, everybody. In terms of singles, there are some collections. There's a Superman and the Authority hardcover. That's the recent 4-issue mini with Mikel Janin art written by Grant Morrison. There's also a trade paperback for the first volume of Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries. There's a Truth and Justice trade paperback that collects all of the Digital First series. And then season 2 of The Green Lantern, also by Grant Morrison, with art by friend of the show, Liam Sharp. Some spectacular art by Liam Sharp. So that tells the second half of their story. Again, it's volume 1, but it's season 2. So The Green Lantern, season 2, volume 1, that's out this week as well. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. As always, I want to thank you for listening. And yeah, stay tuned. We very well may collaborate on that episode focused just on Wonder Woman Historia, because yeah, we could go on for hours and hours just about that alone. I don't have any other content coming out this week that I know of yet, but 12 Days of the Comic Source is coming up soon, so be sure you're prepared for that. I did 78 episodes for the 12 days last year. Can't promise we'll get that much out this year, but we'll see. Anything else you want to shout out on your channel recently?
Yeah, I will. What will be coming out later tonight or tomorrow, I reviewed Mark Millar's opening issue called King of Spies with Matthias Scalera, which I quite enjoyed. It's it's a story of an older James Bond-like character looking back with regret on a life that was fairly unfulfilling, and he wants to deal with the real bastards before he slowly dies from a brain tumor in 6 months' time. It's a fun comic book, and I'll be reviewing that on or around December 1st. So, yeah, and beyond that, yeah, I'm going to be reviewing more independent comics more and more as the weeks continue.
Great. And don't forget, everybody, if you're listening to us on audio only, head over to YouTube, do a search for the Comic Space Boom, ! The Comic Boom, that's Rocky's channel. Be sure you subscribe, like this video, ring that notification bell so you know when new content goes up. Conversely, if you're checking us out on YouTube and you want to be sure not to miss any of the other audio content from the Comic Source, just go to your favorite podcast app or podcast platform, do a search for the Comic Source. We're on all of them, and subscribe to us as well. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.